A lot of women are pro 2A, but they don't carry guns every day. I live in Southeast Georgia, right? There's the city, there's the suburb, there's rural, and then there's the country. And I live in the country where, internet signal is questionable quite often.
Right.
And I see it here constantly, right? Oh, I know how to shoot a gun, but my husband takes care of that.
Welcome back to Whiskey and Windage, the 2A podcast for the people, by the people. I'm your host, Mike, joined by my co-hosts, Adam and Matt. Adam, how we doing tonight, brother?
Dude, feeling great. Finally 100% recovered from the SHOT Show crud. It took me 3 weeks to finally feel like I'm myself again. But I'm just happy to be here with you guys and our guest today. I'm super excited. Someone we had the pleasure of meeting at SHOT Show. And yeah, man, I'm just ready to go.
Matt, how you doing? And introduce our guest.
I'm having a great day, man. Sitting down to do my favorite show with a couple of my okay friends, I guess. I'm really excited about today's guest. We have Ms. Kerry Slone from We the Female. Kerry, most of our listeners probably have seen your face and heard your name, but in case they haven't, tell the people who you are and a little bit about what you do.
Well, thanks for having me. And by the way, I will help you, Adam, with your SHOT Show cred. I don't get sick anymore, and I have a whole medicine regime for that. This is my third year I haven't gotten sick. So after the show, I'll help you. I'll give you the tips and tricks on how to not get sick at
I love it.
A SHOT Show. So again, thanks for having me. My name is Kerry Slone, and I am the president of a nonprofit organization called We the Female. And in short, our mission is to arm the women with education, confidence, and self-defense. What does that mean? It means all kinds of things, but for We the Female specifically, I literally live in a van down by the river. It's an age test for those of you that are old enough to get the joke, because I'm that many years old. But I actually don't live by the river. When I'm on the road traveling, I actually live at Love's Truck Stops. But I travel around in my van, and I teach free and reduced rate concealed carry and firearm fundamental classes to women all over the country. Last year, I taught 210 women in 9 different states. Many different classes. That was all my different classes. It wasn't just the concealed carry classes. 97 of that 210 were concealed carry qualifying classes for free. So thank you very much. And so our goal is to remove the barrier for the financials of firearms training. One of the biggest things that usually prevents women from coming to those initial classes. We've even hired babysitters, for that. So I'm also what's called a trauma-informed firearm instructor. This is going to be something you're going to start hearing a lot more about, I think. That being said, I think that there's going to be some misconceptions and people probably trying to capitalize on that concerns me a little bit about what that really looks like. But I am a domestic violence survivor. I worked in the business of women in the beauty industry for 30 years, and I was an advocate for domestic violence victims and such, and worked with them occasionally through my day spa and things as well. So I bring a lot of that experience to the range and in the classroom as well. And, sometimes the women are very upfront and they'll tell you that they may have, something going on. Sometimes they don't realize they have a trauma attached to it. Sometimes they don't even think they have trauma at all. And so we have to watch for those nonverbal body languages, body language messages that they're giving us constantly while we're teaching, and be able to watch for that. Because no matter how proficient, I know y'all appreciate this, no matter how proficient that we make somebody pulling a trigger and even drawing and, being a, for lack of a better term, runner and gunner on the range, if we don't deal with some core trauma that's attached to that firearm, particularly for women, they're never going to conceal carry that gun and make sure that they have it accessible to them every day. So we want to make sure that we're addressing any sort of core trauma that they may or may not realize that they have attached to firearms, address that first, help them get over it, or at least acknowledge it, so that they can start working toward moving past that, so that we can make sure that they are, in fact, one of our women that are armed and carrying every day.
Wow. So Kerry, that's quite the
Preach.
undertaking. Like doing all of that, like the passion and the drive that takes. And I'm not that we want to talk about in detail, but like I'm guessing your past experience, what happened to you, was that your driving factor? And is that still your driving factor, and like why you do what you do? Because like that's an undertaking.
Actually, I mean, it's a peripheral of it. Honestly, it was a law. It was actually a gun control. I was always pro 2A. I didn't own guns. When I was beaten by my abuser, I was not anti-gun. I was raised around them. You know, I grew up of the culture, you know, as we were talking about before the show started. I joke that I'm half Texan on my mom's side, right? I come from family from Midland, Odessa, Texas, and so the loaded guns in the unlocked gun case was in the grandchildren's room at my grandparents' house when we stayed, and we were more scared of Grandpa than we were of the guns, you know, and touching those guns as it should be. I mean, if we teach all kids that, we're not going to have any issues with guns. It's probably a whole different podcast, or episode, I should say. But so I wasn't anti-gun. If later on, if you want me to share with you where stilettos and shotguns came from, which is kind of a brand that evolved before I created We the Female, I'll share that with you. But what threw me into gun rights advocacy, and then a couple of years later into becoming an instructor, was actually a law in Washington State. If any of your followers have, you know, they follow legislation and stuff heavily, they'll know what this is. 1639 in Washington State. When it was presented, what was it, almost 7 years ago now, was considered one of the most restrictive gun control laws in the country. It's child's play now compared to some of the stuff that even Washington State has since proposed. But there was a lot of things in it, all the classic stuff. It redefined certain rifles as you know, assault rifles. Ironically, one of them was a lever action 22, which cracked me up. Some of them hadn't been manufactured since like 1950, and there was only like 20 of them made in the world. So for those of you that don't know that, little side note, what they do, these states that present these assault rifle bans or assault weapon bans, AWBs, is they tend to take the same list of guns. There's about 70 of them or so. And whatever state has passed it, they just take it from that state and move it. And so they actually don't ever look at it or have somebody else look at it to actually, nor would they know.
Bunch of copy and paste crap.
Yeah, right. And none of the people that are cut and pasting it even know what the hell that they're even cutting and pasting to begin with. So now, obviously, lever action 22, right? It might as well be my Red Ryder BB gun for the most part. Correct. You know, that's sitting over here in the corner. But that was part of it. Safe storage was in there, you know, and of course that was vague. But the one thing that was in this law that a lot of people didn't realize was in this, that I spoke about and I went viral. It actually gave me triggered my PTSD. The anxiety of it did, interestingly enough. There was this one little paragraph. It was the only thing that was written clear in legislation, because if you've ever tried to read that, you know it's a mess to try to read.
Yeah.
And it said, essentially, to paraphrase, that when you go to purchase a firearm in the state of Washington and you sign the 4473, you know, the background check form that gun grabbers think doesn't exist, in Washington State, that is a waiver of your medical record, and you can be denied the purchase of a gun based on what they see in your medical record. Now, we all know they're not looking for a broken leg. No. Right? They're looking for PTSD, they're looking for depression, they're looking for any sort of psychological issue there. So I did what I was supposed to do, and I went to therapy after my ex-husband beat me for the last time. And I had PTSD on my medical record. And I spoke about that law because at that point, I think at that point he had finally stopped, as far as I know. But my abuser stalked me, which is very common. That abusers, once a victim has left her situation, that
they try to keep them
more
out.
often than not, she gets stalked afterward. And so he was stalking me on and off. And I spoke about it. I said, you know, for those of you that just voted for this because you thought that all of this sounded like reasonable, right? Even my pro-gun friends voted for it. It passed by like 60 some odd percent or something. It was high. Wow. Because they didn't advertise that piece of it.
Right.
And nowhere in that did they say what they're going to pass, what they're not going to pass. Oftentimes what people don't realize is how laws are written, how laws are not written. Not how they're written is usually what gets us in trouble. And I could go into the weeds on that, but I'll save it for later. But This particular little caveat had, there was no limitation on how far back they could look in your medical record. The way it was not written, by default, allowed the state health authority, whoever they are, right? They don't name who that is. They just say they're going to develop a health authority, and that could be Margaret from accounting, or what's his name now? They got Bob Ferguson, who is absolutely demonic rabid anti-gun, like way more than Jay Inslee was. We could talk about that later if you guys want, but so they could technically look at your medical record every year if they want. There's nothing in there, no list of criteria or things that may or may not be approved or denied, or that somebody could get you denied. So for example, my girlfriend had the gene that caused breast cancer. And so she had to have the whole thing done, right? All the girl stuff's removed, everything, top, bottom, all of it. And they put her on a medication designed to help balance her hormones during that time. And what people don't realize is that's actually classified in the antidepressant category. A lot of medications are that people don't realize. And so she voted for it, not knowing. And she goes, so, because she didn't read the law. Most people don't read the laws. And she says, so I could be denied? I said, yeah, because you're taking a medication for breast cancer, but it's classified, right? And the people reading this at the health authority, they don't pay attention to that, right? They just look at the list of, XYZ person is on this medication that's in this classification, right? They're not going to look at why.
Right.
And so when I spoke about it, it ended up going viral for many reasons. One of them, people were like, I had no idea. I'm like, yeah, because you didn't read the legislation. Well, yes, I did. No, you didn't. You watched what was put on Facebook that was paid for by Paul Allen and his people, because he was a big funder of that. He put over $60 million into getting that law passed. At that time, I think he's dead now, right? Isn't he dead? I think he's dead now.
I think so.
And you read this. If you read anything, you read the summary in your voters pamphlet. You didn't actually read the legislation. So if, as your listeners, as they go through and they listen to the rest of this episode, if you take nothing else away from this episode, read the legislation, not the summaries. Don't read what's just on Facebook, Instagram, or X, although ironically X is one of the better places now, where you can find some of that. But even then, like, I'm reading some of this stuff with the executive order that people are putting out with Pam Bondi, and oh my God, this is great. I'm like, did you actually read it? Sorry, my cat just decided to come in and get mad at me. She decided she's choosing violence down there. But right, this, I don't know if you guys read the executive order from Pam Bondi, but it really doesn't say much in there. And the only legislation is 100%. And a lot of what's being focused on, make sure I've got now that I moved. I was being very careful about where I kept that microphone until my cat decided to show up. Are we still okay?
Oh yeah,
We're good.
Okay. She's being a jerk. But anyway, so it doesn't. Essentially, the only thing it's targeting is anything that was written under the Biden administration, and any court cases that may be where it's advantageous, right? Is where any of these court cases, which a lot of them did, come into play. But you have a woman. I know I just totally went off the rails with you guys on this. I'm sorry, but this is a button for me, because Pam Bondi, people are supporting her, and she's not pro-gun at all. And it concerns me a lot to see so many people that are pro-Trump, MAGA, whatever you want to call them, that are thinking, well, we just need to give her a break. I'm like, she's been very vocal about not supporting, she's a red flag supporter. She supports expanded background checks, all things that are literally my expertise that I give talks on, in addition to teaching around the country about the dangers of those things for domestic violence survivors, because they usually use domestic violence survivors as a way to pass those laws. And so I'm no fan of Pam Bondi at all. And I think that we need to be holding her accountable, and shame on her and shame on Trump for appointing her, in a position having outright ignorance about the dangers of these laws for, ironically, the people that they say that they're meant to protect. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
I think those are really great points, though, and I think you're right on point with a lot of folks vote on something that they've just read the summary of.
Yeah.
I think even most of our elected officials that are responsible for voting on those bills are guilty of the exact same thing. They just read the summary, they see who sponsored it, they sign off on it, and they don't actually take the time to read the 80 pages of the bill to
80?
see. Some of them are hundreds. Yeah, some of them are hundreds and hundreds of pages.
Yeah.
They just don't take the time to read through the bill and really know what is in there. And before we know it, we've voted all of our own rights away. So that's really important. I wanted to touch on that again.
You know, Massey talked about that actually. He actually exposed a bunch of people, you know, how they gave him some bill. I don't remember what it was. It was a couple of years ago. It was like a 600-page bill the night before they wanted to vote on it. And he had his staff, he broke it up among his staff to have them each read 100 pages each so that and to brief him on it, so that he actually knows what it said. But, you know, and that was the best he could do, because there's no way that he could get a 600-page bill read, you know, in less than 24 hours. So this is what happens, and oftentimes the best case scenario, you have people being briefed by their LAs, right, their legislative assistants on what these are, but they're not reading. You know, good Lord, they can't even tweet half the time the stuff for their representatives that are decent, let alone, you know, brief them on what these bills actually are saying. And I think some of that's by design, right? I mean, they don't want you to know what's in it.
Well, that's the big problem too. It's not just in gun laws; it's just legislation altogether.
Legislation,
like,
period.
Why do we allow bills that are 600 pages?
Yeah.
We should vote on a law or a thing. There shouldn't be. And you're exactly right. We put things in the middle, and we think we're doing the right thing, and we're not. Or we think we're appointing the right person because they say one thing, but what they say and then what they put and what they vote for. I mean, it's crazy what we allow to happen. Just period. Still.
Yeah, and I love to watch our side. For, you know, like the more centric to conservative or right-leaning side become so outraged about this stuff, and because they don't, you know, they can be just as bad as the people that they hate on the other side of the aisle, and they're just more hypocritical about it. You know, at least to give the left credit, at least they stand in their conviction of ignorance. You know, a lot of times, but the people on the right, they tend to just like make excuses and talk around it. When, let's be honest, right? If we're all being real, the only people that we have to blame for where we have gotten is ourselves, because our constitutional republic is designed for the people to be the governance of these people representing us, and we have allowed the government and these people that we elect to take over because we've become a lazy society, and so therefore we just have let them handle it, and then that's what happens. You see all kinds of crap happening, and then, oh my gosh, here we are. Well, how did we get here? Well,
we
kind of let it happen.
We did it to ourselves. Yeah, we did it to ourselves. Exactly.
It's actually our duty to forcefully take it back if it does go wrong.
Yeah, but let's be honest.
That's a big responsibility.
Let's be real. 95% of these...
I'm not saying anybody would.
PG-13, Kerry, PG-13. Let's be honest. 95% of these individuals that are out there talking all of this crap on the internet about taking it back can't even run a quarter of a mile, let alone have any sort of capacity to take it back, right? And then they laugh at people, and believe me, I know some women that are 100% capable. And could I fireman carry? Probably not you. You, I probably could. Now, your feet would probably be on the ground, because I'm short, because you guys have met me. I'm not very tall. But, you know, there are women that are actually capable out there, and they poo-poo the women, and I'm like, bro, you might want to get out of line at McDonald's before you start talking crap to people that actually go out and train.
And,
they're male or female.
I wasn't trying to make a call to action or anything, but really,
for disclaimer purposes.
we've been empowered. We've been empowered by the documents.
My lawyers have advised me to tell you
it's our own fault. It's not a call to action.
Oh, and also
legal just texted.
Yes, and challenge accepted, Kerry. Next time we see each other in person,
Fireman
Kerry challenge.
Well, maybe you two. I know I probably could. Look, that's the kind of I love these men. Like, you couldn't fireman carry. I'm like, women's weight and strength is in their ass. That's probably not the right answer, even for some of the weaker ladies. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, maybe dragging you might be different because their upper body strength isn't the thing, but fireman carrying you?
Maybe.
Women keep their weight in their ass, right? Or they keep their strength in their ass. That's probably, but your feet would absolutely be on the ground, and maybe your hands too.
So, Kerry, getting back to We the Female, because obviously, you know, we talked about your passion, what drove you to it now. So, like, right now, like, how you talked about being on the road and traveling and doing all this. How many, like, weeks a year are you out doing and training right now?
Well, so I'm going to be doing my first arm of my training tour coming up here in March. I'll be at the Gun Owners of America National Women's Range Day coming up here in March 7th.
Let's
And
go.
so I decided to hit a couple of states on the West Coast. Arizona, I have scheduled. That's still pending. I'm not sure if I'll be keeping that, but then I'll be in Washington State again. I always teach in Washington State because that's where I lived, and I have the most demand for classes. And I'll be teaching in Oregon on that leg, and then I'll come home. Last year I was on the road total about 4 months. That was cumulatively, that was a lot. It was a lot. I got hit by the hurricane here. My home did, and we have well over $150,000 in damage. You know, my area of Southeast Georgia was hit really bad as well. You know, you didn't hear about it obviously as much because there were places that were, and deservedly so, far worse hit than we were, and deserved that attention. But you know, we were without power for about 10 days and internet actually for about 5 weeks. Which is a love-hate relationship, but that was because we live close to the city. There were people like
Right.
I had a senior citizen that I went out and checked on regularly. She didn't get power for 3 weeks,
Oh, man.
and this is down in Southeast Georgia. So we actually got hit pretty bad. So that all happened in the middle of this training tour and such as well. So. I don't think that I'll be on the road for 4 months this year. I think I'll probably hit maybe 6 to 8 states. I don't think I'll do 9 or above that I would have liked to have done. I also don't have a big partner this year like I've had in the past. Not that there's necessarily been a lot of money given to me. That's not the deal, but the resources have been helpful, access to ranges and stuff. So when I don't have that, unfortunately, I do need donors because that pays for the range fees and all of the stuff that we don't get donated. And volunteers are great, but sometimes I have to pay people, you know, and that type of thing. So all of those factors are kind of playing in, so everything's kind of up in the air right now because I'm trying to figure all that out. I will in the late spring, early summer. I will be in Michigan, I will be in Tennessee, and I will be in Illinois. I do know that already, and past that, I'm not really sure yet. But I'm hoping to do something on the West Coast. I'd like to get to North Carolina and South Carolina, and then of course here in Georgia. I always teach here in Georgia, so.
Nice. Well, we see you at the GOA Goals event in August.
Of course you will. I was a GOA plaintiff for one of their gun laws, and for that 1639 gun law in Washington State. So I'm a big fan, and you know I ride with GOA. So of course I'll be there.
I love GOA.
Heck yeah,
Yeah,
we're
they're great.
excited.
Yeah, that
Then
was
we'll
the
be
first
excited.
place we met you last year.
Yeah,
First
John
time we met
Farner's
you.
a nerd, but other than that, they're all right.
Yeah.
I love John.
We
I love
love
John.
John Garner, though.
John is one of my favorite people. Whenever I go to Arizona,
Great
I
dude.
stay with John, and John is. I say that with all the love in my heart. And Kaylee Nyman, you know, who works with John, like she is, man, she's amazing.
No, they're great people.
Total girl crush on Jamie or on Katie. Kaylee Nyman, God, Kaylee Nyman, she's awesome. She just had her baby, by the way.
I heard.
We heard about that. We heard because we were on stage the second, but Kaylee was out at that time. So it
She was
John.
bedridden. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, she had her little Evelyn, and she's just a little nugget. She's so cute.
Awesome. That's good to hear.
That's awesome. So, going out and doing all the trainings, you said you're going to Tennessee. Where in Tennessee?
There's a range that I've developed a relationship with called Dead Zero Shooting Park
Okay.
in Spencer.
Okay.
With Scott out there. Scott V has been wonderful to us. He supports us. He, you know, he's cut the range fees for us to an affordable amount, and has just really been great about giving us access to the classroom without extra fees and things, which is great. So I taught a full class that ended up with a wait list last year. So I'm working on getting that class scheduled and back in that area. Love that range. Have you shot out there, Mike?
No, but I know where it's at. But I
You know what their cool toy is, right? Is their rifle range with the electric targets.
Oh, the electric ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But on the rifle range. So, and of course, I didn't get to play with those because I was teaching a handgun class, so I didn't get to go play with those. But I was like, oh man, I have to stay up here an extra day and get out there and play a little bit.
For sure. I don't want to toss you a softball, but I do think it's worth talking about too. I think it's very much needed that there are more female instructors out there going around, just because you get, you get the guy mansplaining everything.
Do you follow me on X?
Probably.
Yeah,
but I
we
mean,
do.
Oh Lord!
But it's the truth, because even to new gun owners, I remember when I bought my first handgun when I was 21 and I walked into a shop, I bought a Glock, but when I came in there, everybody in there, all the guys are telling me, you don't need this, you don't need that, here's what you need. And so teaching a new a new guy what he needs, or trying to convince him into what he needs, I can only see, oh, come here, princess, this one right here will fit your hand well. Look, it's small, you can put it in your purse, and
it's purple.
Yeah, and I know that stuff happens because it's just like, if they treat me this way, I know they're going to treat other people this way. So I think it's really great that you're out there actually training people. I know we've talked to a couple other female instructors, and they say that sometimes men take the course too because they enjoy it. And, women are better, I hate to say it, women are better teachers.
We can be. There's a couple of male instructors out there. Interestingly enough, and it surprises people, one of my mentor, the first guy, the person that I go to whenever I have any questions, is a man, and he's a very well respected man in the instruction space, and he's kind of an a-hole, and so people are surprised that it's because he's really not. You know what I mean? When you get past the exterior of it, he's really not. So, but he. And I actually appreciate that, right? And a lot of women, and let's be honest, right? Let's be real. Let's get into a gender conversation here a little bit, right?
I love it.
And some of the double standards that exist. I, as a woman, one of the biggest compliments I got when I owned my day spa and I was working with a logo guy and stuff, he says, I like working with you because you do business like a man. And some of my female friends were insulted by that, and I was like, no, that means that he's not afraid to talk to me, because I want the truth. I don't want you to sugarcoat it. I don't want you to butter it. And he doesn't. You know what I mean? It's like I always joke, when it's go time and it's get in the van time, I'm taking the a-hole over the diplomat every time, because at least the a-hole is going to be straight with me about what's going on, whereas the diplomat might stab me in the back to save his own ass.
That's why we keep Mike around, because he's the a-hole.
I'm usually the a-hole, so that's usually, which is why I tend to get along with guys better. Until this is what separates the metaphoric men from the boys, right? The ones that can handle me being like that versus the ones that they ironically get a little sensitive. You follow me on X, I know you see this. So back to your point, approximately 10% of certified firearm instructors, like NRA, USCCA, other organizations that are considered, which those are the two big ones, obviously. And those are the two that are usually the only ones that are authorized to for an instructor to be certified through to be able to teach CCW classes in states, which is BS, totally. But that's the way it is right now. Hopefully that will change. So approximately 10% of certified firearm instructors in the United States are women. Those are rookie numbers, and those numbers need to be up. So as a female that not only unapologetically and fiercely is 100% for women, to the point, well, you don't got to cry about it, Matt, honey, it's okay.
Sorry.
It's okay. Are you proud? It's okay.
I feel it right here.
Do you feel it? Or do you feel it where Jesus lives?
Yes, Jesus lives.
So of that, so there's a lot of people that want to complain about things, and then there's people that do stuff, right? There's two types of people in the world. There's problem people and solution people. I choose to be a solution person. So because I choose to be a solution person, and I don't like the fact that we're seeing such low numbers, I became a USCCA training counselor. So I now am also certified to train people to become certified firearm instructors. And my goal this year is to train between 8 to 10 people, women in particular, to be certified firearm instructors, because I believe in that. And then we the female has our own endorsement after that to work with trauma-informed firearm instruction.
That's awesome. That's really awesome, because I do find it just from my interactions and what I see with women in the shooting industry, it you get the guys in there, because I have a hard time when I pick classes and take stuff. It's, oh yeah, I want to go take this thing from this high speed guy that, did so many cool things overseas. And it's like, yeah, I want to do that because it sounds cool. But at the same time, I also need to take some classes from people that just make sure your fundamentals are sound.
Right.
Make sure that, your base level of training is where it needs to be, because without that, you can't do the other stuff. And,
well, and most of that high speed, low drag stuff is absolutely impractical for the average person in everyday life.
It
you
is.
know?
It's. I look at it as, hey, it's trigger time, so it's fun.
For sure. Yeah.
But you gotta have some fundamental training.
Yeah.
But when it comes to me picking classes, it can be intimidating. Who do I want to go to? What do I want to see? What do I want to do? So,
yeah.
Having that barrier, I just think it's great, and I think there needs to be more female instructors.
Well, thank you. I agree with that. It's funny because, you see these people and as you follow me, X is where I get the most heat for a lot of the stuff, and which is absurd.
No.
From these experts that literally aren't instructors themselves. And what's interesting, total side note, by the way, a friend of mine and I, a male friend, a gun enthusiast, he's nowhere an instructor, does not claim to be, but he and I have done social experiments where we have posted the exact same statement about firearms, by verbatim, and how he's treated versus how I'm treated, night and day. The mansplaining, the lectures, the condescension, the chauvinism, and the way that I'm treated versus the way he's treated. Now, what's interesting is we have 30% of our followers are mutuals. So these are the same. This isn't like some random thing, right? Because we mathed it out. Like we did this whole thing, right? And we've noticed that. But it cracks me up because we see these people. Well, you need to do this, and know how to do transitions. Yeah, let me know how that works for you. Colleen, when you're down at Walmart with the kids. Let me know how working those rifle transitions to pistols are going to work for you. Like I had a dude one time tell me, I was testing this jacket, concealed carry jacket. Cool concept, needs a lot of work. The company, I won't say who it is yet, but they've graciously asked me to actually consult on this to see if we can make it better in a lot of ways. But it's that fabric that goes, like it makes noise. And one of my friends that works in the tactical space constantly, and this is it, gentlemen. Listen right now because this is you're gonna learn today. And it wasn't even my statement, but he's like, well, that jacket's terrible. That the fabric on that jacket is terrible because his wife was like, yeah, it's really uncomfortable and itchy, right? Because that's what she's thinking, and she's a military officer, right? And she's still thinking like a woman, not a military officer, who actually does shoot, as opposed to the ones that don't. But he works in this tactical space and in development, design and all this kind of stuff. And he's like, well, the sound of that jacket would give away your tactical advantage. And my girlfriend was sitting right there, and she goes, my 6-year-old is going to give away my tactical advantage with noise, right? But that's a great example of how these dudes think, right? And when the average person that's going to Walmart or Target or wherever to get the groceries, they don't give a crap about tactical. I mean, they don't understand what tactical advantage is, and the fact that that's a huge umbrella that includes using situational awareness to put yourself in a position first to get the hell out of there if you need to, which is always the best thing. And if you can't, to put yourself in the best position you can to mitigate you and your family being injured, right? It's not, you're not gonna drop the lights in the middle of effing Walmart and, put your nods on and start doing rifle transitions to pistols. And these dudes talk to women like this. And then what happens? Women are turned away.
Oh, yeah. Well, a lot of those guys too, they need, and a lot of those guys, they're wearing like a 45-inch battle belt too. So, like you said, they probably can't run a mile. It's true though. You see a lot of it. We going back to the tactical cool guy stuff, not to the fundamentals.
You mean Navy Gravy SEALs and MEAL Team 6?
Oh
hey,
yes,
that's who I operate for.
Give
me a break.
I do contract work.
Look, I'm 10 pounds overweight, right? I got a little extra weight going on. I'm 50 years old. I'm perimenopausal. Let's just be real, right? I get it. But I also don't claim to be that person. Now, the fact that I'm a woman and me taking a shot at you at 100 yards, I'm probably going to be a little bit more accurate than you because women are really good at that.
Yeah.
Especially if their babies are involved, and I've got some training doing that kind of stuff. I actually love it. I love distance shooting. So, the fact that these dudes want to lecture us with some of these absolutely absurd concepts is a clear example that they have no idea of what the average person in America really needs in terms of training, like you said, and I've talked to a lot of manufacturers and other people, podcasts and things, and every manufacturer or the middlemen manufacturers, right, the marketers and things in the industry, they've all agreed with me. Yeah, I've yet to have one that doesn't. When I say 99% of the gun industry / community forgets that they're probably 1% of the average gun owner in America, first and foremost, and that's not even counting the potential market that it could be, but who do they market to? That 1%.
Right.
And so my goal with what I do is everything that I do is reaching those women that are in that other 99%. And sometimes in that like with trauma-informed firearm instruction in particular, especially with domestic abuse survivors and things, sometimes we have to help women understand that their lives are worth defending before we can teach them how to defend it. And so you can't just throw a big gun in their hand and say, okay, go shoot the gun. Sometimes we have to help them find that value in themselves. We see this a lot with our elders too. That they were taught just shoot them in the knee, or I'm old, I don't need to, why do I need to do this? And, so I have to find those emotional buttons to push to get them in the mindset of why they need to do it. And that's all part of trauma-informed firearm instruction as well.
That's huge. I mean, that's a big aspect that people don't think about, right? Like,
they don't think about it. Yeah.
Most people, they think they'll rise to the occasion, or like that typical guy, meal team 6. I'm gonna go take that guy out. But most people have never taken a life, or even come close to taking a life, and most of those same people have never taken a life of an animal either. They like to sit, they like to talk a game. So I think most people, like, that's a mindset to get in, and the responsibility that most people don't even think about, right? We talk about the gun, but we're also talking about taking a life, whether it's a bad person or not. It's still taking a life, and are you up to that? And that's hard.
I'm glad you brought that up. I had, and I tell this story in every class. I actually had to draw my gun one time in Seattle. Crazy homeless guy in Seattle, go figure, right?
Imagine that.
Yeah, right. And I was sitting in my car. If you're familiar with it, you know where I'm talking about. There's like down on the waterfront where there's the ferry, right? There's where you can kind of catch the ferry, and a spot where you have to drive on the ferry. And I was at the light, and I'm sorry, you guys, I have fuzz or something all over me. I feel like I've just got some weird tweaker thing going on, and sorry, I don't know what's going on over here. I apologize.
Talking about Seattle. It's cool.
Yeah, right, exactly. I'm having a, what is that, like a by proxy kind of tweak, or twitch. Anyway, so I'm sitting there, I'm at a light. It was a Sunday night. It was quiet in this area. It was before if you've been there, you know what I'm talking about. It was before they were in the process of deconstructing that Alaska Way, the viaduct that was there. So they had already moved all the homeless people out for the safety issues and all of this kind of stuff and so on. And I'm sitting there waiting for this light to turn. And I pulled closer to the car in front of me than I usually do. I usually leave a spot. For some reason that night I didn't. I'm thinking, looking back on it, probably because subconsciously I thought there were no threats because it was quiet down there. For the people that are always, I never, blah, 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 you're a liar. Because we're all humans, we all err, right? And that's the first thing to being successful in training, is admitting that you're a human, and there are going to be times that you're going to be caught in some situation. And that was it for me, right? Pulled too close to the car, so I couldn't move. Of course, another car comes up behind me. I catch some movement out of my peripheral. And of course I look over, and it's a crazy homeless guy screaming crazy homeless stuff. And he's swinging around a golf club. Now, of course, we always talk about the importance of making eye contact with people so they know you see them, and how that's a huge de-escalation tool. And it is, 99.9% of the time. However, the wild card is always the crazy homeless drug addict. Because in their minds, right, because in their minds, they legitimately think that you're threatening them in some cases, right? That's how they really do think that. And sure enough, that's what happened with this time. And so he started toward my car. Swung the golf club up, and he starts toward my car, still screaming, inaudible, crazy homeless stuff. And I'm watching him. And I'm, now I was like this, right? My hands on the steering wheel, and I'm doing this. Watching him, watching the light, watching him, watching the light, watching him, watching the light. And I realized he's getting closer. So I drew my gun that I kept, between my console and the seat. And I drew it, and I get about, and I remember this, I get it right about here, right in front of the steering wheel, just about the time I was going to bring my hand around to come around. And I can assume that he saw it through the street light that was coming in the window, because he did like a cartoon. It was like his foot kicked up, and he did a 180, and he took off the other way. And of course, by now the light does change, of course. And so I get on the ferry, and my adrenaline is dropping. The endorphins are coming down. Now I'm processing all of this, right? And the first thing I do, I make this joke to kind of take the stress out with the ladies, but there's truth to this, right? And we never want to go in the black, right? There's a reason we train, and we want to stay in the yellow all the time, so we never end up in the black. And so I check them, like, did I pee myself out of fear, And so my ladies laugh. I'm like, no, that's real. Talk to any veteran who's ever been shot at. Chances are they probably peed themselves the first time they were shot at. I've talked to many veterans that have said that, It's frightening. So I'm doing all of this stuff, but it hits me as I'm processing this. Holy shit. I was going to kill that man. I mean, I've trained. I know that I'm trained. I know that I'm capable of pulling that trigger. But in that moment, I realized I am capable of taking the breath out of somebody's lungs and stopping their heart. And that was such a disturbing feeling for a little bit, but powerful feeling too,
It's
you know,
heavy.
and it was super heavy. I had bad dreams. I never pulled the trigger. And this happened, you know? And so I had dreams about it that night. I had dreams about shooting him and me trying to save his life, you know, all of these things. And it's amazing how we train. And the reason we train, for those of you that may be newer to shooting that are watching this podcast, is so that you don't have that pause in the middle of those situations. Like I wouldn't have, right? If the situation had escalated, fortunately he took off. I was going to pull that trigger. I did not realize consciously at that moment it's because I was capable of taking a life. It's because I had trained to be able to do it without having to think about that, if that makes any sense.
It does.
So it's amazing once that absorbs, and honestly for most people you're never going to get that in your head until you're in a situation like that, right? It's definitely an experienced kind of a thing, psychologically and emotionally. But as anybody who carries a gun every day, I know you gentlemen can talk about this, is that you carry a gun every day, you put up with a lot more crap from people than you typically would if you're not carrying a gun. Yeah.
Right.
For all of the reasons, even if you're legally justified, for all of the other reasons why. You just right? It's always like, cool story, bro. I'm walking away.
Yeah.
Right? And after that happened to me, I got to the point where I realized that when I'm in these situations and people want to escalate things, I literally look at them in my mind and I say, I'm walking away to save your life right now, not to save my life. And so I really instill that in my ladies in the classes, because it's a power exchange now for these ladies that are coming into an overwhelming and an intimidating space where they already feel powerless in a lot of times, and they're wanting to gain that power. And I want them to understand that while knowing that you're competent to pull a trigger is powerful, knowing that you control whether somebody lives or dies is one of the most powerful positions in life that you can be in. And it helps women regain the power in some way that they feel like they may have lost somewhere in their lives along the way.
Yeah,
it's definitely heavy. It's one of those things that every morning when I grab my handgun and I go to the truck to leave for work, it's one of those things. It's almost like I say it to myself every day. It's like, I hope I don't have to use this today. I mean, we all go through the training, we all do our things, but we carry for protection.
Yeah.
But also we're not out there trying to serve vigilante justice.
Absolutely not.
We're not trying to threaten people. I was taught a long time ago, if you draw your gun, be prepared to pull the trigger. Don't draw it.
100%.
And so every time I grab my pistol and I go to the truck on the way to work in the morning, it's like, I hope I don't have to use this today. And that's the goal. My goal is to train, and I hope that all the training that I spent, I hope it ends up being like insurance for your car. Like, you just pay it and you never need it. Like,
yeah, well, right, and that in itself, right? Self-defense insurance, legal protection, whatever you want, whatever your choice is that you choose to go with, right? You're like, it sucks until you need it, and but that being said, yeah, we don't, the reason I train the way I do, and this is what I tell my students, I don't train to have to shoot somebody. I train so I don't have to shoot somebody.
Right.
My favorite training, I love teaching scenario training with flashlights. That's one of my favorite things. My husband was very adept with things that he did in the past. For the people that know him, they know. He doesn't talk about it a lot. He stays pretty quiet. You notice he doesn't come with me to SHOT Show. He doesn't go. He was at Goals. If you saw him at Goals, he stays low. He did come to Goals. Yeah, he doesn't like SHOT Show. He hates that crap. Like, he didn't even involved in it. I was literally nominated for a gun, and he's like, nope. He goes, if you really want me there, I'll fly in right before the show and leave. He goes, I don't want any part of it.
Good luck, babe.
Yeah, when he retired from the Navy, he's like, I said, you going to get a job? Because he could do counterterrorism, all this kind of stuff. And he's like, nope. Call me Farmer Adam. I'm going to stay here with my animals, and and I'm over it. So, yeah, I teach, I don't just teach these women, how to pull a trigger and what their gun laws are. I want them to find power. And so in the classroom, I know what I do is a little bit unique, because I get into that space that a lot of instructors don't, right? They stick to the tick points and go down. And I joke in my classes that they're taught from the uterus, because they're very woman-centric, woman-specific emotionally and men, I've had a few men, husbands and stuff, take it, and they're like, oh, it'd be very eye-opening, because we've even had times where even the best of men that have admirable intentions have subconsciously gaslit women into second guessing their own intuition and things. And it's coming from a place of being a protector. Don't worry, I'll protect you, right? Well, okay, but
why don't you just leave if you feel like that, or help her assess the situation to put her at ease instead of just being dismissive of that, even in a good intention, right? A lot of times it's, oh, you're being paranoid, oh, you're being ridiculous, don't be ridiculous. And for our men that are more conservative or gun, it's coming from a place of being a protector, and that's a good thing. However, oftentimes it will subconsciously plant a seed in that woman's mind to be dismissive of her intuition later when she's alone, and that could get her in trouble. And I said that to a gentleman one time, and he was, he definitely, this was in Texas actually, and he was like this, and then I explained to him why, and he went, oh. And I said, yeah, it's not malicious. I said, you're coming from a good place, but understand that you could be setting her up for a position that she may second that. And I ask that every single class I teach, whether it's firearms related, because I do a defensive mindset class, it's not gun related either. And I get a lot of husbands that come to that one. And I warn them ahead of time. I'm like, we might pick on you a little bit, and obviously if you're here, you're man enough to take it, and such. But every single class, and I mean every single one of them, the thousands of women I've taught in all of my classes over the 6.5 years that I've taught, I ask this question to ladies. I said, we're told to trust our intuition, we're told to trust our gut, but what happens when we do? And I don't answer it for them, I let them answer. And it takes a minute, right? Because nobody ever wants to be the first one to answer. It's always that I'm being paranoid. And then they all explode with what they're told. Oh, you're overreacting. Don't be dramatic. Stop being a bitch. All of the things that women are told. Well, what's amazing and eye-opening for men to watch, I'd love for you guys to come watch this sometime to see it, because it's interesting to watch, because they all start to look at each other, because I don't have to validate them. They're waiting for me as an instructor to validate them. I don't want that. I want them to validate themselves, that very Socratic kind of method, right? And so they do that, and then they're like this. And so the men in the room just go, and it's cool to see that, and it's fun to see that eye-opening moment for the men as well, to understand that yeah, maybe she is being a little bit paranoid, but if you've read, did you ever read that book by Gavin DeBecker called The Gift of Fear?
No, I did not.
So it's interesting to watch his attitude about guns change over the years. Little side note is he's updated that book, because in the beginning, when he first wrote that book, he was very anti-gun. But his attitude about guns changed significantly after 2020, and he updated his book, so I thought that was interesting. But in the book, he's a psychologist. He was a victim of a violent crime. And he knew something was wrong, and he dismissed that. So he did this case study where he studied and interviewed all of these violent crime survivors. And 100% of them, every single one of them, said that they knew something was going to happen, or that they felt something bad, and they ignored it. So the whole concept of the book is that fear is not something that you should be ashamed of. It's actually a gift of survival, essentially. Intuition. And so we help women find that, and all humans have it, right? Women, it's been clinically proven. It's been, there's studies that actually prove that a woman's intuition is stronger than a man's. And if she has children, it becomes a superpower. I mean, there's literally colloquialisms about it, and we see it in nature with the animals, right? So it is actually a superpower. Yet, ironically, we're the only species on the planet that has been has systematically broken that for our females, and has taught them to dismiss that one thing that keeps them alive, and has taught them that makes them, that makes them paranoid, not powerful, but it actually makes them very powerful if they listen to it. And at the end of the day, listen, maybe we're wrong, right? I have PTSD. I can get anxiety over a lot of different things sometimes, and it ends up being nothing, but I would still rather be wrong and leave and alive than to dismiss it and end up dead. And that's what I teach my students. And so it's a process too. It's not like you just don't flip the switch and then all of a sudden it changes. It's an evolution of you emotionally, psychologically, training. That's one of the reasons why we call what we do at We the Female a holistic approach to self-defense, because it's not just teaching them how to pull a trigger, which, by the way, is a whole other thing with the men. Men, I love men. I get called if you guys know, if anybody's told you about me before you had me on, I get called a man hater and things a lot. I love men. Somebody's got to change the oil in my car and take out the garbage, right? So. Actually, all kidding aside, I actually love men. There are things that I just don't want to do, and I believe that there's, can women do a lot of things? Sure, but we shouldn't have to, and it's, and that's a whole other podcast episode, I'm sure. But when I get so many of these women that come in, oh, my husband taught me, you guys are going to love this. I know, because you probably wanted to even talk about it. He taught me how to shoot. No. He taught you how to pull a trigger on a gun. He didn't actually teach you how to operate a gun. And so they tell me this, they posture up. I had one. What's really bothers me is when I get women that I know they come in and their husband's like, well, my husband does this and this and this in the Navy. And I'm like, that doesn't exist, but okay. So your husband's lying. Either you're lying to me or your husband's lying to you. And I'm going with your husband's lying to you. Because they don't know what my husband does, right? I don't talk about it. So I'm like, oh, he was this, but this is what awkward when you find out that that's not true. I don't want to be in that home, and that comes down. So, and I can usually tell, well, he taught me how to shoot a gun. Okay. Well, as soon as I get him out on the line, I know better. You know what I mean? It's obvious. But what most husbands do is they teach their wives to pull a trigger, right? They load the magazine for them, they rack the gun for them, they hand them the gun, and they pull the trigger, and they're like, look at me, I'm great at 3 yards. Well, cool. Because 3 yards, honestly, let's be honest, contrary to what people believe, you're not going to be in some shootout when they're 20 yards away. The chances of you actually getting
Probably
up
not.
and on site are in a high stress life or death situation, probably pretty small.
Yeah.
So that being said, we don't let women leave the range until they know how to lock a slide back on a gun. We don't let them leave until they know how to load a magazine and then load the gun and operate the gun, because it is appalling to me. You guys have me cooking now. I'm on my BS.
Let her cook. Let her cook.
It is appalling to me that so many women have this false sense of confidence and security that they come to my classes after taking other classes, even not just their husbands or their boyfriends have taught them, but they've taken other firearms classes, and they cannot lock a slide back on a gun or load a magazine. That is a disservice to women. It's insulting to women, and it can get them killed in a real in a life,
Right.
A serious life situation. And so I hate that. So while most fundamental classes, are here, ours is like here. We joke, but it's true. I want you to be able to not clench your butt cheeks together and lean back, right? The butt cheek lean back, right? The clench. I want you, you laugh because you know what I'm talking about. Matt, do you do that?
No, I laugh
Are you a
because
butt cheek clencher?
No, that's Adam.
I got caught, yeah. I got called out on, I did
I
get called out
actually
on
have
that,
a
yeah.
pretty good pistol stance, apparently.
Is that it, or are you just nervous? Is he just nervous you're behind him?
Maybe a little bit of both. Maybe a little bit of both.
I love
He
Mike
should be
back there.
nervous, though.
Like, he's like sprinkling it on. He's like just sitting back there. He's like just go
I'm just
on.
gonna
you know?
let him do his thing. I'm
Look
like,
at-
hey.
Oh, don't think you're not immune.
Oh, I know.
Anyway, but we see that a lot, and it's because they're, we know why. It's because, well, it's two reasons why. It's either their fear of the gun, that's usually what it is, or they have progressive lenses in and they're trying to figure out how to see out of their glasses, which that's an easy fix. But a lot of times it's that fear of the gun, right? Let's get past all of that stuff, right? I want you to be able to lock the slide back on that gun. There's a whole psychological reason why I do that. I talk about that later if you're interested. It's important, not just for knowing the mechanics, but there's a psychology behind why it's important. But I want you to be able to not clench your butt cheeks together, pull that trigger, and not drop the gun or cry. And if you do cry, that's okay. Let's find out why you're crying. What is attached to that is the reason why you're crying. So let's figure that out. So that is where we are. So when I say that, and I'm not saying that there aren't other instructors out there that don't do this. I'm sure there are, right? I'm not the only female instructor. I'm not a gatekeeper. There's other phenomenal female instructors. And they may do it on an individual basis or whatever. Our entire program is structured around this. And to my knowledge, I'm the only one that has an actual program surrounded by this very psychologically based fundamental approach to teaching those basic operations. Then my level 2 and 3 is when they can come back, they can learn how to draw from a holster. We teach them how to do, then they start having fun. My grandmas love that. They think it's great. We call them Granny Oakleys.
I love it.
At that point, because they get a kick out of that, right? They're drawn from a holster and they're changing their magazines, and then we have them start doing super basic shooting on the move, where they're having to be more, what I'm teaching them really is you can't move unless your neighbor's moving, right? Because you guys all have to be moving in a line. You can't fire that gun while Margaret is in front of you, right? So what am I really teaching them? Situational awareness. I'm teaching them it. I'm doing it with fun. And they don't realize it. So that's what most people do with a a lot of them do with a level 1 class. And I learned that on my own. I took a class from Dustin Pluth and Ken Scott, who are two phenomenal instructors. That was my first class. Guess what? There was a lot of stuff that I wish that I would have learned prior to that I had to break the habits to go back and learn and come back. So a lot of my program is actually based on what I didn't learn and wish that I would have known going in to these fundamentals as the average woman coming in to take a class that just wants to arm her family or arm herself to protect her kids on the soccer field.
No, I love that, because you nailed it on the head, because as a combat medic, the way we train our little baby medics, the way is methodical, and it's the basics of the basics, because in an oh crap situation, you lose fine motor skills. I don't care who you are.
Yes.
I'll rise. No, you won't. You're not going to rise to the occasion. You're going to fall to your lowest level of training, and you're going to fall to those basic motor skills, because your fine motor skills are gone. It's going to be those gross motor skills you're going to have. So I love that.
Mm-hmm. And everything's slow motion. Like, and that's, I explain that to people, like when I drew that gun, right? That whole interaction was probably under 30 seconds. But when I tell the story in my classes and I'm replaying it, I replay it in my head when I'm telling it. Sometimes I'll actually slow down when I'm telling the story, because I'm replaying it, and it was more like this, and it was probably, it was a lot quicker, but I was like, and I still to this day, all of these years later, still remember it in slow motion, and that doesn't change because of all of those skills, those fine motor skills. And so what you're saying is you teach them how to put a tampon in a gunshot wound before you teach them.
Not quite. A little more simpler than that. We go even simpler than that. But
we teach them to rub some dirt on it first, and then
exactly. Tylenol, ibuprofen, and send them on their way. But it does come down to that. I mean, so many people think they're going to rise to the occasion and be the hero, and I'm sorry, you're just not. And I'm not being. It's all of us.
Chances are you're actually going to shit yourself and freeze.
Yeah,
is what
and
you're
it's scary. Yeah. You're going to fall to those gross motor skills and to that lowest level of training, and that's why military is big on fundamentals, train basics, because of that aspect. I mean, no one cares about being the expert, like you talked about earlier, being like this super high operator. That's such a high level, but at the end of the day, even those guys, they're training the basics of the basics all the time, and they're good at them. They're the best at them, right?
And those are usually, you can always tell the idiots on social media that really don't know what they're talking about, because they always go to that runner and gunner stuff, as opposed to like my guys that have actually seen some stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they're like, cool story, bro. You know what I mean? They're like, this is not going to be. So side note on this, I'm an herbalist. I don't know if you know that, but I actually went to school and I trained to become an herbalist. I grow a lot of my own medicinal herbs and stuff. I did it for a lot of reasons. One being I wanted, oh, hey, welcome back, Matt. I wanted to be able to provide alternative remedies and therapies for psychological medications, psychotropic medications for gun owners. So they didn't have to go to doctors and get on medications that could get them red flagged or get their guns taken away. That's the primary reason I did it. But I got super into this. And are you familiar with Sam Kaufman? Check him out. I should have grabbed that book. I didn't even think about it before we started. So Sam Kaufman was a Green Beret medic. And he is also a clinical herbalist and forager and survival medic. And he has written a couple of my favorite books, but one of them is, it's called the Herbal Medic. And it talks, and it's a holistic approach, right? So he's got modern triage that military uses for, assessing, what to do. And then, he even goes in, he's like, look, here are your herbal remedies for pain relief. But let's be real, nothing is going to fix anything the way acetaminophen does, or vitamin M.
Right.
For people watching that know. Like I said, I'm married to the military. I know what vitamin M is. For those of you that don't know, it's ibuprofen. And you cut your foot off? Oh, here's some, vitamin M.
800 milligrams.
800 milligrams of vitamin M, and be at work tomorrow at 6 a.m., right?
That's right. That's right.
0600, 800 milligrams every 2 hours, because clearly it's never going to damage your liver.
Never.
So he's got all of these great resources for herbal treatment as well as how to forage them and stuff. It's great. So if you're into that kind of stuff, I'll share that. I'll get you the information on the book.
That'd be awesome.
It's one of my favorites. I keep a lot of things, and and there's the other line of this too. And I know that y'all probably see this out there too, especially as a medic. The you cut yourself and you need stitches. Just pour yarrow herb flowers in it. It'll be fine. Yarrow is a styptic that stops bleeding. It does. but not in a gaping wound that's going to need stitches, right? If your kid gets
Right.
a little boo-boo and cuts himself, yes, it's fine. Throw some honey, mix it with some honey, smear it on there, you'll be fine. If you have a gunshot wound,
Don't put yarrow in it.
don't put yarrow in it. Probably not the best idea. So there's that. But right, like everything with the internet, everything is one extreme or the other with these people.
No, it is.
So
Kerry, yeah, go ahead, Matt.
Oh, I was gonna say. So, Kerry, there's a lot of guys out there like me whose significant other, whose wife or girlfriend, whatever, whose significant other is firearms curious. My wife actually does shoot quite a bit, but there are a lot of women out there who definitely support the Second Amendment. They believe in that as a right, but they are nervous to make the jump into learning those skills themselves and not just leaving that up to their male spouse as, oh, you're the protector, you know this. How, as a man, how do we, what's a good tip, what's a good way for us to introduce the sport and the skills of shooting to our significant others?
So a little backstory on that. Let me ask you a quick question. Does your wife carry a gun every day?
Every day.
That's surprising. That's actually good, and I'm happy to hear that. Do
She
y'all
does.
have wives they carry every day? Because a lot of wives of it's amazing to me that in the industry, right, go to goals and go to the floor and ask how many of those women on the floor actually are carrying a gun every day.
My wife is.
Less than 1% of them probably carry a gun. The ones that are attending, right, because their husbands have the gun and they handle it. And they're pro 2A. I see this all the time. I love that you asked this question. So we see this constantly, right? A lot of women are pro 2A, but they don't carry guns every day. I live in Southeast Georgia, right? There's the city, there's the suburb, there's rural, and then there's the country. And I live in the country where, internet signal is questionable quite often. Right. And I see it here constantly, right? Oh, I know how to shoot a gun, but my husband takes care of that. I've been in little dress shops because we still have dress shops here. We don't have malls where I live. And, I said, well, where's your husband now? A creepy guy. I was in a store one time and a creepy guy walked in. And it made them uncomfortable. Now, the good news is here, as opposed to like Washington State, where I used to live, was I said, you guys got a gun behind the counter?
And she's like,
which you could never have said before, No, she didn't. She goes, oh, our husband's carrying, but we don't have him. I'm like, where's your husband now? And they literally, both of these gals went. I said, your husband's not going to be with you 24/7 to take care of you. And if he's with you 24/7, we need to have a different conversation because that's a concern to me. My husband's retired and home and he's not up my butt 24 hours a day, and I have 30 acres and he's on it and not near me, all the time. So that's a whole other concern that I have, and usually a sign of abuse in some capacity. Whether a woman realizes or not, because oftentimes women don't realize they're being abused if they're not being hit. That's, again, a different conversation. But so first and foremost, we have to change how we're approaching women. Oftentimes what we see is men get super excited when a woman expresses interest. Oh, first, let me back that up. Gentlemen, stop pushing it on your women. Because the more because I see this, well, I'm trying to get her to do this, and I'm trying to get her to do that, and I'm trying to get her to do this. I love that you are, but the more, how often when you try to tell your wife to do something, is that going to work for you?
not very often.
Not very often, right?
Unless you don't have that problem.
Yeah.
Well, there's that, right? But so that being said, it's the equivalent of telling her to calm down, right? It's just not
Good luck.
Exactly. So she's going to push back on it, and part of it, let's be really honest, is ladies, let's be real, it's because it's your husband. Right? I mean, we just don't hear things the same way, and vice versa. They just don't hear things the same way from us. I know that my husband is probably listening to this in the other room going, really? She can actually apply this to everybody else but not herself? Because I know, right? I get it, right? 100%. My husband is one of the best instructors ever. He used to teach. He was a competitive shooter. He actually shot in the military. He actually operated firearms on a regular basis. He was one of these guys. And he is a great teacher for everybody else but me. Right? Mm-hmm. I threw a pair of $800 contacts across the ground, pissed off, and not knowing that he had paid that much for them when I threw them. That probably would have changed my attitude a little bit. But right, and he was incredibly patient with me when I did that. So, first and foremost, stop pushing. That's the first thing you can do. What I would do is, if you see somebody like me or some of the other ladies that are out there that you like their content, say, hey, check this chick out. Right? Let it be her idea, because we as women always want it to be our idea. Just like men. Men and women are both, that is not just a man thing where it's like, oh, you got to make it his idea. Women have similar things like that too, right? That's human nature, right? So let her lead herself to it, but that doesn't mean that you can't plant, right? Like Hansel and Gretel, right? You can't plant the treats on the road to lead her to it. So when she finally says, maybe it's time to go learn, help her find an instructor. Don't take her yourself to teach her. Even if you're the best instructor in the world, like I said, my husband's great. Guess who I don't learn from? My husband. Guess who will not even go to a training class with me? My husband. Why? Because he knows he's going to be more focused on paying attention to me than he is for learning for himself. Right? That's another thing, right? Inherently, when I have a husband come to a class with a wife, I put them on opposite ends, or I don't put them on the firing line at the same time. And usually I put him on at opposite ends because I don't want him trying to step up and help her either, right? So I try to keep them separated because inherently he wants to help, and that's not a bad thing, but it's something we have to acknowledge. So help her find a well-vetted instructor that she will think is a fit for her, not that you think is a fit for her. Is it always going to be a woman? Most of the time, I would say for somebody who's initially getting involved, yes. There are some men out there that are great at it. What I would recommend is having her start with a woman and seeing how she feels about that, and then going to man and seeing what she prefers. Always vet the instructors. Always ask for information. Talk to them if you can. Don't just rely on what you see, right? Because even reviews can be fake sometimes, right? I never hide when somebody wants to talk to me about it. I'm always open to talk to them. And if for whatever reason they feel like I'm not a fit for them, I'm going to find them somebody that is, because it just, maybe it's a personality thing too, right? And that's possible as well. So once you do, say she goes and she takes that first class, right? Now you're excited because now you can go to the range with her. Take her to a range. Do not buy her a gun. And for the love of God, stop buying her those Ruger LCPs.
The
Stop
ones.
buying those damn LCPs for your ladies. Every single time I've had a woman, look at these men laughing. Now you know who will argue with me about the LCP is Tim Harmson, right? Military Arms Channel.
Oh, yeah.
He and I go off about, because he loves that gun.
I like
while
the
I carry it in my
LCP.
boot. Yeah, do you carry it in your boot like Tim Harmson does?
Nope.
So, right, but okay. So that being said, let me ask you this: would you put that in the hand of somebody who shot for the first time?
Nope.
Exactly.
I like the LCP. It makes me laugh, but
we call them the snapping turtles, right? And I had one woman who came to my class who had big man hands. Like she was like 5'11", and she was like linebacker built. She's built like Mike. I mean, she's just big, right? Broad-shouldered, beefy, broad, right? She's a big girl, and her hands were huge. Like she wore a size 10 ring, and it wasn't that she was heavy. She was just big. And she picked up, somebody brought an LCP. She goes, "Can I shoot that?" And she literally had trouble getting, because there's no barrel on that gun.
No.
You know what I mean? And so she had a hard time getting a grip on it, and it made her nervous. She wouldn't even shoot it. She goes, her hand was too far up because she didn't understand. She had just learned how to hold a gun herself. So she wasn't about to try to play with that. So she was smart, because I wanted to let her assess that on her. I wouldn't have let her do anything unsafe, but I wanted her to assess that for herself. So stop buying LCPs. For your ladies, every single time that somebody has brought an LCP to class, and I mean every single time that either they went and bought it and they were sold to this, and shame on you, dudes at the gun stores that keep selling this crap to women.
Yep.
Shame on you. Stop it. I know you want to do it because it's cheap. You can move them easy. You probably get points to get free shit from Ruger or whatever you're doing. But stop, because you're not helping these women at all with these guns. I actually had a woman try to give me an LCP one time, interestingly enough, which said to me that she knew nothing about guns and that she was just following along with what the guys did at a big box store one time years ago. Anyway, take her to a range where she can rent guns. And here's my advice on this from experience. Oftentimes we talk about that. Let them rent several guns, find out what's best for them. Well, that in itself, right, can be incredibly overwhelming, because they're just going to go, what are women going to do that have had little to no experience shooting? They're going to go, oh, well, that one looks fun, or let me try that one, or let me try that one. Well, then they lose track of where they are and what's this and what is this. This is a subcompact and this is this, and they don't know, right? So this is what I recommend. Have them hold a 1911 platform. Look, if loving 1911s is wrong, I don't want to be right. I love 1911s. Do I carry one every day? No, but I do love to shoot them, right? If it's good enough for 2 world wars, it's good enough for me.
Amen.
Yeah, and they're art. I mean, they're just a beautiful gun. They're becoming popular again, especially with 2011s coming back out. Love them. Anyway, so have her pick up a 20. She's probably going to like it because they do fit nicely in a female's hand. especially the 1911 platform and chambered in a 9mm, something like a Kimber, you know what I mean? But you know what I mean? Something along that size. That was my first gun. I wouldn't have bought it now that I know what I know, but before I was in the industry, my first gun was a Kimber, that 1911 kind of platform in a 9mm. So have her pick up that one, have her pick up a subcompact, have her pick up a compact and a full size, like a Glock 19. Here's the thing, Glock is the only ringer there. You have to have her pick up a Glock separate from any other full size because the grip is its own category, right?
Yeah,
and they
100%.
Yeah, I shoot phenomenally with Glocks, even though I hate the way they feel in my hands. They're super awkward, but I'm actually really good with them. Huge conflict that I'm working through. So have them do that. Have them, so this is gonna save you all a lot of money and headache and stress and confusion later. Have her put those in her hand at the counter. Let her pick which one of those platforms she's most comfortable with in her hand. Then rent 3 or 4 different manufacturers or models from that platform and then take them out and let her shoot those. And once she becomes more proficient with that, then she can start playing with other stuff. But that will help you establish what platform she's most comfortable with so that you don't end up spending a lot of money for her first carry gun. Although, oh no, wouldn't that be a shame, right? Because, I mean, obviously I don't carry that gun. I don't carry the first 3 guns I bought before I was in the gun industry because I hate them. Now we don't ever get rid of them because you just don't, I personally don't sell guns. I don't think that's a good idea. I just keep them. You never know, right? This is for informational purposes.
They're like
not based on
shoes. You need one for every day of the week. It's
you
fun.
kind of need one. Well, for women, I'm glad you said that because interestingly enough, women will find that they actually need them for different outfits, right? What I carry in a dress. I don't know if you saw the video where I'm drawing from under a dress and inner thigh, Kerry. And there's no way I'm carrying a Glock 19 between my legs unless you're going to be questioning my gender when I walk in a bathroom, right? But I carry a Sig 238, 380, and my draw from under a skirt is 1 second. And would you guys believe that I still had dudes on X mansplaining to me how to be better at drawing from under a dress? I wish I were kidding.
I bet you did. You're not kidding. I know that you did.
Hey,
I know that you
maybe
did.
those guys were. I mean, we need to
Maybe
question what they're doing in their free time.
Are they from Seattle?
One of them wraps a towel around himself and does a video to try to show me what he's talking about. He's like, well, this is what I. Okay, so here's a fun story for you. So, and ironically, he was still a second and a half slower than I was. And everybody was like, bro, she still absolutely destroyed you with that draw. Because I practice it. In fact, I used to wear dresses when I owned my day spa 90% of the time. I'm probably faster from under a skirt, inner thigh, than I am at my hip, honestly. Because it's just what I did for so many years. And I would practice it with every dress that I wore, when I left. But the dude says, well, this is what a woman taught me when I'm wearing a kilt. And I'm like, okay, first and foremost, you got an Uncle Mike holster that you're demoing out of, and you're not. God. That's your first mistake. Now I know you're full of shit because you got it right. Now I'm definitely not listening to you because of that. First and foremost. Second, you ain't inner thigh carrying A, an Uncle Mike's holster, and B, with your junk sitting on top of the grip of your gun. That ain't happening. Which means that you're wearing underwear. Bro, that means you're wearing a skirt, not a kilt, right? For all of the reasons why this is like you're full of crap, dude. Like you're like for all of the reasons why we call on your story. So, but again, this is the crap that women deal with. Like these dudes, literally, my draw was 1 second, and I know my draw is good from under a dress because I've done it for years. And I still had men trying to mansplain to me how to better draw. But to your point, yes, women having guns for different outfits will definitely benefit them. Certain regions of the country, they can carry full, up there where you are in Idaho, right? You can carry a Glock 19 6 months out of the year. Down here, and where we are in, maybe not so much Nashville, but some areas in Tennessee, you could probably get away with that. Georgia, Southeast Georgia, oh no. No way. I'm carrying something a lot smaller. I'm carrying a subcompact or a 380 90 times percent out of the year because it's hot. So all of those things are factors. There are some phenomenal women out there that do some great concealed carry stuff. I don't do it just because it's out there and I feel awkward doing it. Tat Girl Michelle is actually one of my favorites because she really is, because she does a lot of really practical stuff. She's an esthetician too. So I was an esthetician for years. So I kind of relate to her and vibe with her on that. But she actually shows you, she doesn't just do, this is my cute concealed carry outfit. She's like, this is how I'm drawing out of this. Brooke Tini is another one. She does some good stuff with that as well. those are gals that, and don't get me wrong, like you know, little Emily, what is she, Princess and Pistol, I think she goes by. We actually hung out at SHOT. She's a doll, right? She's the one that went viral with her cutie patootie, that cutie patootie post, and she's lovely. You know, and so watch that for those outfits, and she's relatable to my daughter because she dresses like a grandma, like my daughter does, with that little cutesy, you know, kind of grandma vibe. So my daughter is very relatable to her. So that's a great thing, and I think that does bring women to the table. But to be able to, once you have a little bit more experience, to be able to see the nuances of what pros and cons are from carrying in certain ways with certain guns. I think like Tat Girl Michelle is what she goes by on Instagram. Bertini Baby, I think is her name, right? She's another one.
Yeah,
These are great gals.
Too.
And I always, she's lovely. So I send them to them, you know, even Jade, you know, she does some of that too, as well. Some of the, Jade Truck does some of the, Jade can run a gun too. So, you know who else is great? She doesn't do concealed carry, but if you've not had her on, is Tracy Lee. Tracy
Lee.
Oh, that's our homie.
Tracy's the homie.
Yeah. That's our homie, yeah.
She is one of my favorite humans on the planet. And, you know, we became friends. There's a long story to it, but, you know, we always knew each other. But I was around some women that were trying to poo-poo her one time, and I was like, she is not a gun bunny. I said, that woman runs a gun better than 99% of the men that I have ever seen. I said, are you just jealous that she knows how to market herself better?
Yeah.
And that conversation ended really fast, and apparently Tracy caught wind of it. But I adore Tracy.
Yes.
I have an immense amount of respect for Tracy. She's smart. She knows how to run a gun. And would I send one of my ladies, not that she wouldn't have the empathy for it, right? But I would send one of my ladies after I taught her her self-worth to touch a gun. Then I would send her to Tracy afterward, you know, to learn how to run that more efficiently. Yeah, she's a badass. I think Tracy's pretty amazing. So there are great women out there. I'm all about supporting and promoting those women, you know, to a fault in some cases. I do not put up with asshole men in this industry at all. And that's why I get called a man hater, because the industry for me isn't the way that I'm making my money. I'm not trying to be famous in this industry. The industry is a catalyst for me to reach women. If notoriety comes with that, so be it. And if that is what helps me reach more women, so be it. But my purpose and my mission, and the reason I gave up everything, I owned one of the most successful day spas in the state of Washington. I ran one of the first apprenticeships in the state of Washington to train people. I was living in this amazing, glamorous life, right, doing all this stuff. And when my life changed overnight, when I went viral with that, speaking about that gun law, I realized this is something that's needed. And then it, of course, evolved into being an instructor, which I didn't realize that I had a very unique way of approaching that. So for me, this is I don't mean to sound cheesy, but it's a calling for me to be able to get out there and reach these women. So I am, oftentimes to my detriment, 100% for women, period, to the point where I'll call other women out that are being shitty to women too. I don't care. Like, no, we don't do that here. We don't do that in this space. We don't act like fools to get men's attention. We're here to help women, and we're going to do whatever that is to make that happen, so that we can arm them. Because listen, gentlemen, if you want to save the Second Amendment, you better get more women involved, period. And if you need proof of that, all you need to do is look at how these mothers lost their ever-loving minds when they found out about gender ideology being taught in schools and vaccines. So my dream, I always joke that, I don't know if you saw that on Bill Kirk, because Bill Kirk, the Washington gun law guy, he's a good friend of mine. I said, I have a dream, like Martin Luther King Jr. My dream is that women will become as angry about gun control laws as they are about gender ideology being taught in their schools and their kids being forced to get vaccines. Because if you get women that pissed off about gun laws, and you have to teach them that, you can't teach them the gun law because that's not what's going to get them. You have to push that emotional button to help them understand that this is how they can protect the Second Amendment shall not be infringed for a woman. Shall not be infringed is the catalyst for them protecting themselves and their babies. More importantly, their babies, right? You can't get to them with them. You go to the baby route, and that's the button. Grandmas too, right? All of that. That's how you get it. Once we help them understand that, and we push that emotional button to help them understand that the Second Amendment is for you because that's how you protect your babies. These women, you let them loose, and gun control debate will be over. And it's absolutely horrific to me and angering, frustrating all the ings, all the adjectives, that women have been weaponized against their own best interests to support gun control. When women, there's statistics that show that women are one of the top 3 demographics that benefit most from gun ownership. And in that category of females, elders, single mothers, and abuse survivors, contrary to gun control, gun grabbers trying to use domestic violence victims and children as pawns for gun control. Those are the 2 biggest pawns. We benefit the most from gun ownership. And we have to reach women, and we have to, right? All of these ignorant comments, and I'm not ignorant, but tired, right? And I'm sure you guys get tired of seeing it too. Oh, the Constitution's my permit. What part of shall not be infringed don't you understand? Shut up, Grandpa Elmer. Shut up, Elmer. Like, we're not, or Margaret. What is it? Like, the new Karen's the new Margaret
yeah.
now, or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
Shut up, Margaret. Because women, they're not hearing that. That's not how we hear it. You say, yeah, like me, right? That's how I got thrown into this, right? This gun control law that I went viral talking about could prevent me from buying a gun because I have PTSD in my medical record, therefore keeping me from being able to protect myself from the man that beat the hell out of me, almost killed me, and then was stalking me. That's how I got women mortified about the gun control. I'm like, you voted for this. No, we didn't know. I'm like, yeah, because you didn't read the bill, right? Yeah. So when women understand this is how they can be better served to protect themselves with the most effective self-defense tool available to them, now you start to see that attitude change, and now you start to see them fighting back. And when we can do that collectively, like they did for gender ideology and vaccines, it'll be done. It'll be over.
That's awesome, Kerry. I love that. I love what you're doing with We the Female. I love that you're this huge 2 advocate. But I do want to transition over to stilettos and shotguns, and I want to talk about that before we get out of here today.
Are you sure?
Well, yeah. Yes. Let's see.
Welcome to Whiskey and Windage After Dark.
Yeah, we're gonna along with Kerry Slone's episode, is we are actually starting the Discord only version of Whiskey and Windage.
Paywall.
Some stilettos and shotguns.
Big drink, big breath, stilettos and shotguns.
Yes.
What do you want to know?
What made you start stilettos and shotguns? Let's talk about, like, that was prior to We the Female, correct?
Yeah, so it was actually an Instagram account that I had that supported my day spa. It was actually called Stilettos and Lipstick. And I was in the fashion, and I actually did makeup. I was a makeup artist and nail technician, like I said, an esthetician, owned a day spa. I worked with friends in Los Angeles that were, celebrity makeup artists and things. I had done reality TV shows, makeup for reality TV shows, and run this day spa. And like I said, my whole life went 180. Like, I owned 300 pairs of heels. Not counting, that's where stilettos, came from. In that, my life went from literally Chanel. I owned a Chanel bag, and went from a Chanel bag and Louboutins to range boots and level 4 plates really quick. Yeah, life comes at you fast, ladies. Let me tell you. So, so I went to therapy. Are you guys still good?
Yeah.
Is my microphone still okay? All right.
Good.
I went to therapy, did what I was supposed to do. Had PTSD, on my medical record, because after being beaten, I did that. Statistics actually show, side note, that there are studies, I should say, that show that the second largest demographic behind veterans that have PTSD are domestic abuse victims.
It's believable.
But
see that?
But we don't talk about that as much. And the way we treat domestic abuse victims and survivors, you would never treat a veteran the way that people treat, you tell a lot of they tell a lot of abuse victims, well, you just need to learn how to get over it and move on, and but you would never say that to a veteran, right? So there's a little eye opener for you guys. So moving forward, I hope you as men can hold men accountable that say stupid shit like that as well, because the reason women stay, there's a lot of reasons, and most people don't understand that. You never know how frightening it is until that man looks at you and say, if you leave me, I'm going to kill your kids. Like, and after they've completely taken away every bit of financial ability in your family and controlling your life completely. So anyway, I was diagnosed with PTSD. I did the EMDR therapy, which was great. It did help. The nightmares were improved. They did not go away completely, but I had the nightmares that were so severe that mine went even past night terrors. So most people know about night terrors. They've heard of those where you get like the night paralysis and stuff. I would wake up from a night terror fully conscious and have my legs paralyzed, my arms paralyzed, my vocal cords. That was the most frightening, not being able to talk or scream for up to a half an hour. After I was awake, I'd literally be walking around banging on the walls. And I lived alone with my daughter and, trying to, get my vocal cords back. That was the most frightening. Because the legs, I could, even though it was frightening and I couldn't move, I could calm myself down from that, knowing it would go away. The vocal cord thing, like nobody ever told me that can happen. That was crazy. So fast forward, I meet my husband that I've been married to now for 16 years. And he went to some of this therapy to see what it was like so he can understand it, which I also highly recommend. If you have a spouse, male or female, that has PTSD, please, please, please go to a therapist with them to understand what they're going to go through, because it gets worse before it gets better. And you need to understand what they're going through. So please, 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 women, if you're married to veterans, or men, right? I guess just in general, if you're married to a veteran, you have an abuse survivor, anybody who's suffered any sort of extreme trauma, please go to some therapy with them so that you can understand and have a different level of patience when you're dealing with it, because it's a lifelong struggle. You can't cure PTSD. It's adaptive behavior therapy. So the nightmares improved, but I couldn't get them to go away. And he was deploying on a 10-month deployment. And I was anxious about this because at this time, my abuser, he went into the we couldn't find him category. And so we didn't know what he was doing, whether he was stalking me, what was going on. So my husband took me down and we bought my first shotgun, which was a 20 gauge semi-auto at that time, because he wanted me to be able to give me a basic lesson in it before he left, where I couldn't. In Washington State, there's not a lot of availability for a lot of good training, especially for anything like that with shotgun or rifle up there. It's very few and far between that you can find it. So he wanted me to have a basic understanding. He knew going in with a 12 gauge is not it. Like, ladies or gentlemen, do not give your wife a 12 gauge when she first starts out without absolutely getting her some professional training, because that's its own beast. I just did the 3-day shotgun summit with Van Comp, which I highly recommend you guys do. Changed my life, totally changed my perspective on home defense with a shotgun. Wow. I'll be going again this year because I liked it so much. But I was 1,000 rounds in 3 days. My ass was cooked. At the end of that class, as you can imagine, I was like, good Lord, walking around like this all bruised up. But so I put the shotgun on a rail on the side of my bed. I don't know if you guys, you guys would know this, but some of you may not know that are watching this. Like, you can buy these little rails that go between your mattress and your box spring. And it's like this little corny looking, very redneck kind of thing. But the nightmares stopped completely once I had that shotgun. I had no more nightmares. And so that's where stilettos and shotguns came from.
Wow, that's really cool.
So and again, this was years before I got into the industry. This is probably 4 years before I went viral talking about that gun law. So stilettos and shotguns existed. I posted on my social media about the law, the 1639, and I said, for those of you that just voted for this, you just put me in a position where I could be denied the purchase of a gun to protect myself against my abuser, who they all knew, right? I was a prominent business owner in my small community. And they all knew my ex-husband. They knew what he did to me. I didn't hide from it. I went to work with no makeup on for a month because I wanted them to see my broken teeth. I wanted them to see the black eyes. I wanted them to see the fingerprints around my neck from where he picked me up and threw me around. I didn't hide from any of that. As a lot of women, they're ashamed of it. I didn't wear it as a badge, but I also wasn't going to be embarrassed by it either. As a lot of women are, and for a lot of reasons why, because of how psychologically broken they are. So they knew who this person was. They knew what a monster he was. And so when I said that, I got a lot of, oh my God, I had no idea. I'm like, yeah, because you didn't, like I mentioned earlier, you didn't read the bill, So this is why you need to understand legislation will bite you in the butt if you don't know what it is. Well, it went viral, and that was in November. I had already started coming up with the idea of We the Female, but I didn't really know what it was going to look like. It was going to be my retirement plan, something I wanted to do to help women. I at one time even looked at maybe offering microloans to abuse survivors that successfully completed a transition program. so that they could start their own businesses or whatever, because I did, right? I was homeless at one time. I don't talk about that a lot just because it doesn't really come up. My past doesn't come up, but I was actually homeless, living in a room that a tanning bed was in that was taken out, that I put a little bed in and slept at a salon.
Wow.
That I worked at that had a shower in it. So at one point in my life, I was homeless. So I thought this would be great, right? It's a way that I can give back to women. So I didn't know what I started We the Female. I didn't know what it was going to look like. And then when that post went viral and people wanted to talk to me and things were going on and what's all this about and so on and so forth, and more women were like, oh my gosh, I never realized this, right? Because a lot of women support red flag laws because of the way that they're marketed, right? Of course we want to keep guns out of the hands of mentally ill people. Who doesn't want to keep guns out of the hands of mentally ill people? Oh, you take an antidepressant? Congratulations. You probably can't own a gun now, or you can have it taken away from you. Well, what do you mean? I just use it for sleep. Yeah, well, I know that. But guess what? Right? And so that was when I also realized that approaching it from pushing the emotional button was important, right? Because in the gun space, the conservative side, but particularly the gun space, we get a lot of facts over feelings, facts over feelings, facts over feelings. Well, first and foremost, we don't live in a culture that's facts-based anymore. We live in an emotionally driven culture, first and foremost. Second, women are empaths. Not that men can't be, but women are driven through empathy. And I hate that there's this far right, I call it the tater tots, the Andrew Tate manosphere bullcrap, right? And I know you know who I'm talking about. Oh, yeah. And I call them the tater tot bros. And right, their chauvinism and their anti-female crap. Like, women are too emotional. They shouldn't do this. Well, actually, emotion is a very powerful thing that can be very effective if it's channeled the right way and not suppressed or taught that it's a negative thing. So, which is why I teach my classes through that, because that's how you get to people. And when I confronted, did you guys see the video of me confronting Kamala Harris?
No, I don't think I actually saw that one, no.
So I confronted
Kamala. Ask her about gun control. Was that the one?
So about red flag laws.
Yes,
so it was when she failed in her first time running for president. And interestingly enough, she was in Seattle campaigning on gun control. Interestingly enough, Bob Ferguson, who's now the governor there, was sitting right next to her, which was at that moment I knew, and this was almost 6 years ago. I was like, he's going to push for being a governor, and he's very Inslee was more climate, two-way, anti-gun stuff was a bonus for him. Ferguson is like Hochul or Newsom about guns. He wants zero guns in the state of Washington. Right. He's the reason you can't get insurance up there. Yet, ironically, they just presented a bill that you have to have $75,000 self-defense insurance for each gun you own. Yet you literally, what is that, Common Core math? Like, what does that mean even? Like, you literally ban us from having it, then you want us to have it. Stupid. Anyway, so he was right there. So me confronting her went about exactly the way you thought it would. All right, the deer in headlights look that she got, and she looked away. But when I was in the bathroom of this venue afterward, and I was washing my hands, these two little minions in their little orange Mom's Demand shirts were standing there, and I said to them, I said, it's unfortunate that Kamala wouldn't talk to a domestic violence survivor about red flag laws. That's all I said. And they immediately went into their talking points, immediately, and defending her, right? Sticking up for her. And I said, well, I'm the domestic violence survivor, ... And I didn't get the rest of my statement out because immediately they went, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I can't believe, are you okay? That's awful. That happened to you. And right, they went into all of this kind of crap. And I said, thank you. I said, but those red flag laws that you support can be used against me by my abuser to keep me from getting a hold of a gun that I can protect myself with while he's stalking me. And they were nonplussed. Literally like in a TV show, they had nothing, right? It was my mic drop moment. So I walked out of the bathroom, and ABC reporter, by the way, ended up being in there. I didn't know it. And she followed me out, which I recorded that because she wasn't going to try to turn some shit on me on that. But it ended up being nothing. But she had never heard that before. Like, she ABC, right? She was covering the campaign trail, and she had never in her life had heard that concept before. So I talked to her about it a little bit. But it hits me as I'm processing this information and I'm driving home. These gun grabbers, their need to show me empathy, whether feigned or genuine, was more important at that point than their talking points were.
Yes.
And because that proverbial shield came down, I was able to get in with some shit they weren't ready to hear. And it changed their, I jokingly, right, their little methodical advocacy or activism OODA loop. I totally threw off their little loop, right? They're like, we don't know how to, but
What do we say?
We froze,
Yeah.
right? We froze just like you would, and right, because they did not get the expected response that they were wanting from that interaction. So I that was my moment when I realized that when we can, I don't want this to sound negative, but when we can use that emotion as a excuse the expression, but as a weapon. I don't like to think of it because that's can have a negative connotation in some ways, and sound manipulative, and I don't mean for it to sound that way, so forgive that. But when we can understand that that's the power that we need to use when we're talking to women. Dudes don't care, right? They're either going to like guns or they're not, for the most part. There's some exceptions to that rule, especially once they become everybody changes their tune once they become a victim, right? That's always the thing, right? But for the most part, dudes are like, gun, cool, let's go blow shit up, right? Where women are like, well, wait a minute, right? Let me help, and what does this do, and and how's this, and how am I gonna keep this from the kids getting it, and all this kind of stuff, right? It's just different, just a different mindset about it. But when we can use that emotion, but we don't get emotional, we can plant those seeds. Now, when it's people that and this is what I would do in my salon all the time, and this worked because I flip some feminazis, what I call the far left, because I consider myself a real feminist. Not the far left feminazi stuff, but I'm sure as hell not going to let the far right Andrew Tater Tot bros act like idiots and treat us like crap either, right? So and that's where most women are, is in the middle. Yeah. And we're seeing that we're being fought from both sides. Why? Because women are powerful and we get shit done, and both sides are weaponizing us for their agendas, or trying to. And so I sit in the middle going, don't let them talk about you like that, and why are they using you for this agenda, right? So this is the lane I stand. So when we can do that, we plant that seed with people we know, because now they don't see you as the crazy gun person that is right, that's marketed in the redneck NRA shall not be infringed redneck, or the tactical bro standing in front of the Capitol, which I've done with guns. I ended up in some Antifa book about Nazi fascists or something about that. Apparently, I come to find out that's my ex-profile.
No, that means you're killing it. That means you're doing it right. If you show up in the Antifa book as a far right feminazi,
that's my profile picture on X.
Perfect. You're killing it.
That's my profile picture on X. It was actually in front of the Oregon State Capitol. I was down there for an open.
Yes.
Oh, I became a Getty image. A lot of people don't realize this, but there was a bomb threat during all of that stuff in Vegas. And it was two men and a woman, and they took a stock image of me and my two buddies and used that image. And they ended up having to, I screenshot, I've got it somewhere. They ended up having to print a retraction on that because they'd implied that we were the ones that did it, and they had to write this like little retraction at the bottom, like, oh, I was a shit stirrer. Like, so clearly We the Female versus stilettos and shotguns. Two very different brands. I'm very clear about that, because stilettos and shotguns is ready to get in the van and go, and actually trains for that. Okay. And that's why I became an herbalist too, right? I know what tree sap to seal that cut with, right? I mean, that's what I did. Versus this is the way we have to approach women through We the Female to get them to this point, because we can, but we have to start here and move them over here. So when we can do that, they don't see you as that crazy person. They're going to listen. Now you're going to hit the wall with them at some point, right? Like now the cognitive dissonance, like you've messed with their jokingly that OODA loop, right? That they're ready to give you a response based on what they're expecting you to say, and they're not going to get it. So when you start to see that resistance, back off. And when you can back off, they'll come back when the next question comes up, because now you've got them questioning it. And if you can do that slowly and periodically over time, yes, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And conservatives are the worst at that. And we've seen that through elections. It wasn't until this election that they finally figured out that we have to run the marathon the way that the Democrats do, instead of trying to sprint at the end to win, because that just doesn't work. That same logic and tactic applies with gun rights. And when you can do that slowly, you will get them. I turned a feminazi on that, actually. I let her listen to my 10-minute speech I gave on the Capitol lawn in D.C. from years ago, where I actually described some of the details of what happened to me when I was physically beaten. And as a far left feminist, right, it angered her. And as she's watching this video, she goes, I would have shot him. And I paused. I was giving her facial, actually. I was working on her facial at the time as she was watching this video. It was not a luxury facial. It was, anyways, actually I might have been waxing her, whatever, it doesn't matter. Anyway, so she goes, yeah, I said, because I stopped, I said, would you have shot him? Knowing, right, because now what did she say? I got her emotional, right? I have her emotional. And she went, well, yeah, I would have. And I said, now you know why owning a gun is important. And then I could see right? And so I backed off. So a couple weeks later, I actually ran into her in town where I had been out in public. I was actually, I was running and had come and stopped in my day spa. She was there seeing another one of my employees. And I had a thin t-shirt on because I was running and a little concealed carry gun. My SIG 238, which is my favorite. If you're going to carry a 380, ladies, make sure it's a steel frame and not a polymer framed gun because the recoil difference will be significant and you'll thank me for that later. But she could see it, right? She could lightly see the printing under the shirt and she goes, what is that? She knew, right? But you could see what she's doing. And I said, well, this is what I carry because I don't go anywhere unarmed. She says, you're always armed in here? I said, I've been the entire 5 years you've been a client here. I've never not been armed. And she was like, and I said, do you want to see it? And she goes, can I? And I went, you bet. So I pulled that thing out, I cleared it out, locked back that slide, and I handed it to her, and she looked at me in her eyes. She went like this. I could do this. And I said, could you? Why don't you come to a class? That was it. And I wasn't an instructor at that point, right? So, but you get the idea, right? When you can do that and you can play that marathon game, believe me, it's hard sometimes. And the hardest thing for people that get into that kind of space is to understand you're not going to get to everybody. And that's one of the things that we first want to do when we get into advocacy. And I did it, right? I was guilty of it. I fought with everybody because on both sides, right? The ones that treated women like shit and the other side that wanted to take them away because I wanted you to understand that you need to see this. Over the years, I've come to find that certain people you're not going to get to them and don't waste your time on them, right? So I can't remember who told me this, but somebody gave me great information on this, and we use the two response limit, whether in person or through social media, right? If you give them 2 responses and they're still acting like tards, just walk away.
That's a good rule.
The 2 rule limit, kind of like the 72-hour rule on any crisis that happens, like this dude out of Maine yesterday. People kept asking me for my opinion on this, and I'm like, well, first of all, the dude's lying. You can tell by his body language and the way he's moving his eyes and shifting and the things he's saying or not saying. Like, there's more to this story with the shooter guy in Maine that was killed by the cops. I said, but wait 72 hours. Either it'll disappear because there's not truth to it, like something sketchy with it, or you're going to have all the information. Well, you notice what we're not hearing a damn thing. Did you guys even hear about it? There you go. Exactly. So what was really happening with that story? Something they tried to blame it, saying it was a brainwashed MAGA extremist that was brainwashed to believe that the cops were trying to kill him. And I was like, of course, stilettos and shotguns is like, but are they? I'm like, you know what I mean? Like, but there was just questions. Like, I just had a lot of questions about the whole video, but you notice it. I mean, if you guys didn't even hear about it,
right?
I'll tell you, there's more questions going on there. So, so 72-hour rule on any major event before making a formal statement, and a 2 response rule.
That's a good
say when it comes to me talking to both sides, it's my whole gig is I just want to just let's go shoot. And understandably, there's some people that if you put them in that situation and they're not prepared for the recoil, the loudness of the round, that stuff, you can definitely turn some people off. So you kind of go with small calibers, and most of the time, like a good 22 semi-automatic pistol or a rifle, it's a good starting point for someone who's never shot a gun.
Isn't the 22? It's like the college kid riding the scooter, right?
Yeah. It's like
gateway drug.
It's so
great fun
fun
until your friends find out, but you find out all your friends are riding scooters too.
Oh yeah. But it's so great. But you gotta break that ice.
Right, that barrier. Right.
Come shoot with us. If you can shoot a 22, and after you're done, if you're like, hey, that was kind of fun, like, would you come again? I could see myself doing it. All right, great. If they're like, yeah, no, that's not for me, it's like, all right, well, I mean, you shot. Thank you for letting me do this with you, and I respect your opinion.
Yeah.
We respectfully disagree, but at least you came out and tried.
Right.
And
And I agree with you. It's a little harder to get women to do that initially. That's why we got to break that, psychological barrier with them. But that being
Agreed.
said, some of them you can, and I absolutely agree with that. I do a class called Shotgun versus AR that destigmatizes, because I'll get a lot of women in my classes that are actually pro 2A and don't want ARs banned, but they're scared of them. Right, and usually because of all the crap their husbands put on them, or all the tactical stuff. And I know you've got guns in the background, because I was going to bring out. I did bring out some of my favorite guns, but I wasn't sure with being on YouTube if we were going to do show.
See them in a minute.
We can do show and tell. Yeah, we can do show and tell.
Good. Okay. So, but anyway, so once I've developed and established that pattern of trust with them in the pistol class, they will come take this AR class from me. Now, one of them, interestingly enough, it was a nail salon client that I had for years, and she was in her 70s. I quit, in the day spa, closed it down, and a couple years later, she messages me. She really very liberal, very feminine, like full blown. I wouldn't call her the feminazi, but she's actually the woman who took me to the hospital because I showed up to work the day after my ex-husband almost killed me. 4 hours after he finally left and was arrested, I showed up to work because I had to go to work. I was the owner, right? I found a babysitter for my daughter. I had to go to work. This is just, the way we are. And she was my first client. She actually is the one that took me to the hospital. She goes, "You're not working today." And took me to the hospital. Anyway, so she came and she took this class. Pistols were fine, which we see a lot from women on the left. Like, that's actually something we see. Well, handguns are fine if they have limits, but ARs we need to ban. And she wanted ARs banned. So she came to the pistol class. She did okay. And I said, "Do you trust me? Will you come back and take this shotgun versus AR class?" Is what it is, right? Because women are often told, just get the shotgun, right? Well, everything they tell you an AR does, shotgun with the right load will do it, right? And I always refer to John Wick 2 when he absolutely takes that dude, cuts him in half. And
oh yeah,
you remember talking about with that M4, that Benelli M4? I'm like, yeah, actually shotguns will in fact decapitate somebody if you have the right load at the right distance. I mean, it's a thing, which only makes me love them more. But so she trusts me. She comes back and she's gonna make a statement. Right? There's a photo of it out there. It's probably on X or on my social media. I can't leave it up on Instagram very long because Instagram flags it, so I have to pull them down. But they're on X too. She's got this AR in her hand, but she's wearing a Notorious RBG hat. Now, it's unfortunate that so many people on the left have demonized Ruth Bader Ginsburg because she was a phenomenal voice for women and she was a true constitutionalist. If people actually study her, they will pass the edited versions that the right has done to demonize her the way the left does with other people. Like, she was actually an incredible woman and voice for women. I actually have a lot of respect, or had a lot of respect for her and the things that she did. That being said, she has obviously become the, poster child for the far left feminist, which is unfortunate. So she wears this hat. One of my favorite pictures that she's got this RBG hat on and she's holding this AR-15. That's one of my assistants caught it. I didn't even know she caught this photo. And so she shoots it a couple of times and she looks at me. She goes, "I'm done." And I said, "Okay." And I said, "We got her a chair." Remember, she's in her 70s, right? And so she sits down as she watches the rest of the women and she's listening to them hooting and hollering. And they're all ages. I think one of them in the class was 20 and they went up to her age, all through that. 60. There was 8 women in the class. And afterwards she goes, "ARs aren't," she goes, "they're not for me." She goes, "They're a little big." The noise bothered her. Thank God we were outdoors. Could you imagine if we'd been indoors? I hate teaching indoors for that reason. Hate it.
Especially a gas-operated carbine indoors.
I can't. Yeah, no. So, but she says, "They're not for me. But I don't understand why people want to ban them now." And I said, "Here's your money back for class." And she goes, "Give it," because I was going to give it back to her. She goes, "Keep it for a scholarship for somebody else." So we changed her mind about ARs just by developing that relationship and baby stepping her through that. And, interestingly enough, it's the women that I really want to understand are my pro-gun ladies. There's no reason for you to be afraid of an AR. An AR is a hell of a lot easier for you to shoot than a 12 gauge. A hell of a lot easier to shoot. Yeah. I would give an AR to a lot of women, not all, but a lot of women, I'd give them an AR over a 12 gauge any day, even a 20 gauge in some cases, for home defense. Now, my favorite for ladies, especially my Granny Oakleys, my little old ladies, is a 9mm piece. Those are always my favorites for Oh, man. That's probably my favorite gun. If somebody says, if you can only have one platform for the rest of your life, what would it be? 9mm PCC with a 40, 50 round mag. Done. That's my favorite. Because they're just versatile. I can fit it under the seat of my car when I'm going through College Park in Atlanta.
It's under a trench coat.
You know,
Yeah, right?
Kerry,
Yeah.
it's funny you say that because we're getting to that time of the show, actually. We have a question. There's a question we ask every guest, and that was a perfect segue, and I love it. Because this is the question, and I think, Matt, it's perfect to ask it now.
I think it's getting to be that time, guys. So, Kerry,
I've been talking a lot, so I'm a talker, as you guys knew coming in.
Oh, we love it.
Oh
We got
no!
you.
It's gone perfectly, and you just segued, and it just lines up nicely. So I usually
Well, thank you for giving me this lane to be able to get all of this out because it's important. It's obviously passionate for me, and I feel like it's relevant. So
No,
100%.
we appreciate you coming on and talking about it. 100%.
I can already tell you that there will definitely most likely, well, not most likely, there'll definitely be a follow-up episode down the road. We just,
on Discord, not on YouTube.
yeah, we'll go a Discord route. We'll do the Discord
Whiskey
route.
and Windage After Dark.
Yeah.
Well, it'll be on Rumble. Rumble, we can do whatever we want.
Yeah, we
on,
can
so
do
don't worry.
whatever we want.
Rumble and
on
Trace.
Hey man, I'll co-host that one. Well, you guys need a little levity. You guys need a little levity in your sausage fest over here.
So
Anyway, you were saying.
it segues into one of our favorite segments and a question that we ask every guest. It's not original to us, of course. We stole it from someone else, but it's a lot of fun. And as gun people, gun guys, gun women, we all kind of secretly judge each other based on their our
I don't
tastes.
secretly judge. I openly judge.
We openly judge each other on our
I'm a woman.
tastes.
I'm a judgmental bitch.
Well, then you'll do fine in this category, I'm sure. But we like to end each show with top 5 guns. So NFA doesn't matter. The cost of ammunition doesn't matter. It's not World War III. It's not the zombie apocalypse. But Kerry Slone, if you had 5 guns and only 5 guns that you could take for the rest of your life, what are those 5 guns going to be?
Man.
I bet that Ruger's in there.
Totally.
The
Top 5. I
LCP.
can only have 5 guns. My husband
I'd
just
have
walked
5
downstairs. all the time.
LCPs.
I can only have 5 guns for the rest of my life. Apocalypse hits, and I have 5 guns, and that's all I can have.
But NFA doesn't matter. Ammo
you
doesn't
can own
matter.
full auto, you can own whatever.
He says J frame in a 22.
He's a smart man.
He's such a nerd. So, okay, look. Is this where I make the joke about, clearly all you need is a 1911 because if it won 2 world wars, it's good enough for the apocalypse?
Yeah, that's fine.
Back world champs.
So, okay, all joking aside, I would probably take, and I'm going to go with just not necessarily the specific manufacturer because that's a very personal choice, right?
Yeah.
But can I show, are we
Yeah,
we good?
we're good. Show
can
and
show.
tell.
Okay, I would go with the 2011 platform, just because it's a solid choice. Staccato generously donated this one to my organization, so that I can show these women that, ladies. Oh, ladies, I'm guessing 95 to 98% of your listeners are dudes, but for those other ladies,
Actually,
ladies,
we're growing now. We're
Good.
at like 8. Our demographics like 18% women now. So
We're getting
Excellent.
close to
Ladies.
20, yeah.
if you're new to guns, understand size matters, and the longer and the bigger the barrel, the easier it is for you to handle it.
It's true.
So, less felt recoil. Like, we could be totally immature about this, but we won't because we don't want to get in trouble. So, I would absolutely go with a 2011 platform just because you've got, other than 1911, obviously, just because of capacity, they tend to just run and run and run and run, even dirty, right? Like, I mean, right? And if we're talking apocalypse stuff, you're not going to have the opportunity to clean your guns all the time, right? So I would probably definitely go with this. I would 100% go with a pump action 12 gauge because you got to have a pump action 12 gauge. I would not have said, now listen, I would have probably still said that prior to taking that 3-day class as a possible. Now, after taking that 3-day class, absolutely, because I 100% learned that using a shotgun for defense, tactical defense, is night and day difference than hunting. And do not think for a minute that if you know how to hunt, that you know how to use one for defense. So go take some classes, learn the difference. That being said, they're arguably one of the most versatile for both platforms, or both things to be able to hunt with.
for sure.
Zombies, questionable humans of moral turpitude, questionable moral turpitude, and deer.
Preach.
Or whatever else you need to, right? Or
Preach.
hogs. If you live in the South, Texas, we have hogs, right? It's a crazy thing. So that's what I would probably do. You got to totally always go with a good little flintlock. I'm kidding. I'm just kidding. So I would do that. I would probably say a PCC, just because, again, for the versatility, the hideability of them, for sure. And then, I don't know, man. I would probably go AR over an AK, just because I think that the accessibility to find
I knew
parts.
she was smart. I knew she was smart.
Shut up, Mike.
I'm not a big AK fan anyway. That being said, M&M Industries, I don't know if you got to shoot them out at Pro Gun. They completely changed the game on AK. I mean, I fired one round out of that thing and literally looked at the camera and went, like, it blew my mind. Hardly any recoil, it was like butter. I was super impressed. So, that being said, when we're thinking about practical purposes for these types of things, you want something that if your gun, you have any sort of issues where you got to fix it, the chances of you finding some AR parts to be able to fix it in an apocalyptic situation is going to be higher. Just like arguably, you should probably have a Glock, because if shit goes down and you need to take somebody's
magazines, parts,
the chances
anything.
are Glock, right there. They don't call them the Toyota Corolla of pistols for nothing, right?
Right.
So I would probably even throw just a specific Glock in there. Pick your Glock, because it doesn't matter really for the most part. A double stack is going to go in any double stack. Single stack is going to go in any single stack. I would always go with double stack. Glock 19, honestly, is not my favorite gun, but it's a good staple
100%.
That holds a lot of rounds. So I would probably say, what am I at? Is that 4?
So we're 2011.
I got my 2011. And a good solid AR. Of your choosing. A PCC and a 12 gauge shotgun.
Shotgun.
We got one more. Do movable equipment counts?
Anything counts.
Like an Apache helicopter?
Apache helicopter if you want to.
Helicopter works.
Only because my husband knows how to work on them.
Perfect.
Someone picked a tank. We had one guest pick a tank before, so
I thought about a tank. Honestly, if I'm being really honest, because I have to think about the people around me.
You can have anything.
I would go with a destroyer. Because my husband would actually know how to commandeer a destroyer and be able to run it.
I love it.
And
and I could live on it. And I could live on it.
Easy. Travel's easy.
So he would absolutely, that's what he used to do. Like, he used to take over phones. So he would know how to do that. And so hold on, because I want to show and tell something for you guys. One of my first antique gun purchases.
A
collectible?
I have an AR over here too. If you guys have ever seen Argos Ordnance, which is Iraq veteran, right? It's Chad's. I have one of the first ones that he's ever built. That gun, that dude's buffer system is dope. Like, it is absolutely amazing. It is probably my new favorite AR. And I have it over here if you guys want to see it. But this is my first, and I actually bought it out from underneath Eric Blanford. We were doing some politicking together in Sierra Vista, Arizona, and we went to Tombstone for breakfast before we had to give these speeches.
Nice.
And we went into this antique gun store, and he saw this one and flipped out, and he's like, Randy's going to kill me if I buy that gun. And I said, well,
I'll buy it.
I kind of want it. If you're not going to buy it, I'm going to buy it. And he goes, you're really going to buy that gun? I said, yeah, but I do not know.
It's a Stagecoach.
That's her name, actually, Stagecoach Mary. So all of my guns are named after badass women in history, so that I can also tell the stories of our amazing American women from history that have often been lost. So all of my guns are named after that. It tends to open up those dialogues and conversations. So yes, this is an 1860 Remington black powder double barrel 12 gauge. But look at this, man.
It's gorgeous.
Look at that.
It's freaking gorgeous.
Great? Yeah, she's beautiful.
And it's got 2 triggers. You could pull them both at the same time.
Yeah, so this is, look at the detail in that. Isn't she pretty?
It is beautiful.
That's so cool.
Yeah, so this was my first, this is a replica. My husband bought me a bunch of these, including a replica, because I'm a history geek. He's a historian. He's actually, his degree's in history. And so while a lot of people are watching reality shows, we actually watch like Revolutionary War documentaries and stuff. I got my tour of Peacefield, Abigail and John Adams' house for free in a booked out. The tour was booked out, and they still squeezed me in for free because I knew more than the curator.
This is a hell of a picture right here. She's sitting here holding the Stagecoach in a black.
I'm about it.
She's got that "Ye shall not pass" gig going.
I get it.
Now.
The boys give me a hard time because I like grandpa guns.
Hard to get her all in.
Yeah.
They give me a hard time because I like old guns, but like
Love
I'm,
'em,
I'm
right?
feeling it. I love it.
Yeah. So, here's the thing though, right? And this is what I told Eric. I'm like, I've never shot black powder. And listen, y'all, I would say there's a
fun.
lot of things that you can go out and pull black Rambo, be crazy with. Black powder ain't it. You don't play with black powder unless you know what you're doing.
You'll get blown up.
Right. So that being said, since I bought her about a year and a half, 2 years ago, she's not been shot because I just haven't had time to go, hook up with anybody that can teach me how to load it and deal with black powder because
Yeah.
I'm not stupid.
It's a
and
recipe.
I'm not going to redneck that shit out of the back porch. But let me grab right quick. I'll grab this Argos, my other rifle here. This is my husband. I came home from one of my training tours actually, and he likes to play with my guns while I'm gone. And I say that because they're all mine, not his. I mean, they're obviously ours, but they're all, you know what I mean? Because I'm in the industry, he's not. I mean, it's just a bonus for him. He's like, so he was actually deployed when I went viral and was actually running these exercises and was black, right? He was out, dark, radio dark, or whatever they call it. I was a horrible military wife. I really was. He was deployed for 10 months with somebody that lived across the street from us on staff, meaning there was only 30 of them in the office he worked in this carrier strike group on staff. And he was deployed with a dude that lived across the street from us in our neighborhood, and I didn't know it. Like, that's how, definitely my identity was not my husband's rank at all, right? I just didn't care. So occasionally I'll come home and he's fiddling with my guns. And so this is my Argos, right? This one is by Argos Ordnance. Check them out. The price point is great on these rifles, too. I'm not an affiliate. I'm not trying to sell it. Chad, working with IV88 for as long as he did, he knows guns and he knows how to design them. And when he showed us this buffer system, have y'all got the chance to shoot this yet?
No.
Shoot
Not
one of
that
these?
one, no.
Does it got the CMMG 22 in it? It looks like.
Yeah. So it's got a right now. Yeah, he was zeroing it in across our pond from the guest room window.
Nice.
So that's what I found out. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, right now we got a Mark 18 in there that's
Shooting
on a
in the
tripod.
house. Be quiet.
I'm like, what are you doing? He goes, zeroing it across the pond from the window. From one window, it goes across the pond. The other one goes to the mailbox in the other room. It's the reason there's no screens on. Reason there's no screens on my windows. So kind of like Hickok, right?
Yeah.
Where like John used to shoot out of the windows.
Oh,
So,
yes.
But I remember when we went in because he's also an FFL, and I do my transfers through him for We the Female. He had just finished up the renderings on the computer program for the buffer system in this, and of course that's beyond me, right? I don't understand that's a Chinese language to me that I just don't understand it. You know what I mean? And I know my limits. I understand how they run. I can show you how they run. I can talk gun, but getting into the mechanics, it's not yet. Eventually, I'll get there. But we get out into the car, and my husband says, "You're going to want one of those guns." And I said, why is that? He goes, because what he's explaining in that buffer system means that the recoil is going to be almost gone from this gun. So sure enough, that was in, I don't know, April, May. So come October of that year, they have the IV88 range day. And of course, he had them out there. He was debuting them at that point. And I got to shoot it. And I turned around and I looked at my husband. He goes, I told you. And so I looked at him and I said, I'll pick it up next week. So I went ahead and I bought it. So this is it.
That's awesome. Nice.
So in terms of ARs right now, as of right now, this is my favorite, right? It always changes. But so that's what I would probably do if I had to strap up and put a backpack on and hit the road. Also, other than the AR itself, all of those guns, other than my destroyer, obviously.
For sure.
For me to get to my destroyer, pretty much everything else I could put in my bug out bag and head out. Because I don't need to, with medic, other than having my tourniquets and maybe a chest seal, I can pretty much get away with most anything that's not going to kill me. I can forage it because I've learned how to forage that kind of stuff. Like learn tree sap, man. It's one of your friends for sealing wounds and stuff, bleeding wounds. Don't underestimate what nature has to provide to you to be able to heal yourself, and not just internally, but what it can do for you wound-wise and stuff. I highly recommend learning true dirt medicine, not just emergency. Like I know they call, like you're right, emergency medicine. Dirt medicine a lot, but learn true, like the metaphor, like rub dirt in it. Now, like learn how to cut a tree open and pull some sap, because you'd be amazed at how much it can heal a wound. And I geek out about that kind of thing. You ever want to talk about that stuff, Adam? You want to geek out, do some stuff, we'll do it together.
We will. I love it. No, Kerry, I love it. Kerry, you are a wealth of knowledge in so many aspects of everything. We truly appreciate it. And like Mike said, we need to have you back on for a second show. We are out of time today, but thank you. And Kerry, before we get out of here, once again, where can people find you and what you do?
Not on OnlyFans.
That's
Got it.
Adam.
Okay. Definitely, that's only Adam on OnlyFans,
Yes.
not me. Okay, and that's because Matt actually was a failure at OnlyFans and had to go public with his stuff. It got awkward. You know,
I leaked the images.
He's easy, not cheap. Easy and cheap. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. So you can find me on all of the socials. We the Female. Instagram, it's We the Female _official. WeTheFemale.net. Like I mentioned earlier, if you believe in our mission to help provide, to remove the financial barrier for women, when I can't get somewhere to teach, we provide the money to another instructor at Goals. Actually, when I was on the panel with Nick Freitas and my buddy Shermichael, everybody knows Shermichael in the gun industry.
Oh, yeah.
I mentioned if you need financial aid, we had a 68-year-old lady reach out to us and ask for financial aid, and we found her an instructor in Virginia where she lives, and we gave the money to an instructor that we vetted for her so that she could get the training because she's on a fixed income. So when we can't get to somebody, we provide the financial aid. We won't deny any women, but we do prioritize giving those funds to domestic violence survivors that have left their abusers, single mothers and elders, because they're usually more financially, negatively impacted and can't train because of finances. You're welcome to donate. You can go to my website, WeTheFemale.net, where you can find it's a PayPal. Unfortunately, I do have a Venmo. You can message me for that. And we do have a Give, Send, Go at We the Female as well. If you like the spicier side of things, it's very political. It's very snarky. It's very fighting. I get pretty brutal. This is where I get called a bro a lot in this space. You can it's true. You can find me on Stilettos and Shotguns. It's 3.0 on Instagram for clearly the reasons why you think it is. I'm on my third account. But you can find me on, and if you really want to go there, you can find me on X at the _SNS. That's where you're going to find the most interaction I get because I don't get censored there.
Awesome. Kerry, once again, thank you so much for coming on the show. You are welcome back anytime. Guys, if you watch to the end, make sure you leave a comment, ask a question, hit up Kerry. Like I always say, stay dangerous, carry a weapon. We'll talk to you soon.